Week 2 has arrived, ladies and gentlemen, and so have we on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. I am your host, Eric Balkman. You know me from the FFPC, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, and of course, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. Follow me on the X and connect with me there at Eric Balkman, EricBalkman. Pleased to be joined tonight by the social media director for Player Profiler, the host of Wake and Take, as well as numerous other shows. You follow him on the X at JFootballWine. It's Jason Allwine. Jason, thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight, man. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I had to do a little bit of a double check when you invited me on. I was like, me?
Yes, you. Absolutely.
Show with Eric Balkman?
Yes.
So it's awesome to be here. Very excited. First, week after games, too. So, yeah, we got football to talk about. I mean, great time to be alive in general, but heck.
Yeah. Obviously, we spend, at the FFPC, we opened up drafts in January, and I think we focus in on everything we know, which is not a lot of information, all the way through August and September. And even with one fewer preseason game now, there's limited information. Now we have 1 week of everybody played at least one real game, and everything's all asunder, right? Everything is totally different now. So we're obviously adjusting to the new normal tonight. Now, Trade Gods and AFE, what are those?
Yeah, so Trade Gods, currently we're on hiatus breakup mode, but that is with me and Maddie Kiwoom over on the Player Profiler Network. We were a weekly show, kind of just following the fantasy football market, giving our trades, giving our buys, giving our sells, following the listener league. But we stopped that show. He moved over to South Harmon, which is a fantastic stuff going on over there. Well, we're going to figure out a way to bring it back, I think. But on right now, just season kicking off, just a rough time to just get together. But such a good show, and highly recommend checking out, if I could plug it, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One episode, we knew it was the finale. So we just talked for 2 hours, gave all of our best buys heading into the season. Highly recommend checking out that episode. JMO was on there, of course. So we already get a little bit of a victory lap. That's over on the Player Profiler Network. Shout out Maddie Kiwoom.
The Wake and Take show, you do that live. Is that 5 days a week that you do that?
It is. Yeah, Monday through Friday, also on the Player Profiler Network, 10 a.m. Eastern. I'm here talking the news, talking what happened, talking my takes. It's a really great time. And the best part about it really is the chat, the live chat. We usually have at least 100 kind of guys in there live, chatting it out with each other, making fun of me or agreeing with me. You know how it goes. And it's really just a great time and a really fun community that we've built over there. So Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, the Wake and Take.
That's fantastic. And obviously everybody needs to watch that every day. Another thing you need to do is play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. There's no draft or salary cap. Choose 10 or 12 players. Watch them ride through the weekend's games. Remember, you can only pick one player per NFL team. You can enter for $35. You can enter for $200. Win up to $2,500. We have 10, 30, and 100 team contests. Some will lock by kickoff tonight of the Thursday night game, which we're a little over an hour away from that. Classic or Slim format. Slim obviously has no kicker, no D. You can either do one of two things. Go to myffpc.com, or maybe easier, just to scan that QR code that we have right on the screen over there right now that our producer Matt Deutsch has put up. You can scan that. That'll take you to the registration page. And coming up on the show tonight, Jason and I are not only going to go around the NFL, tell you about all the news, including some breaking news about the Thursday night game here that we'll lead things off with. But we're also going to get into a Thursday night football preview with the Dolphins and Bills. We'll tell you everything that we think is applicable for all your high-stakes fantasy football leagues tonight. And then Jason is going to put together an FFPC Weekly Challenge lineup that we'll critique. We'll put that together coming up to lead off hour number 2. And then we'll wrap things up with some starter sit questions that are facing many of you, both at running back and receiver, as well as tight end and quarterback. And that'll be the show, and it'll go lead right into Thursday night football with the Dolphins and Bills tonight. That's going to be a good game for sure, and a fun game for fantasy as well. Yeah. So the breaking news that we learned right up at the top, right before we went on the air tonight, about 15 minutes, Devon Achane is going to be active for week 2 against the Bills. There was talk about him being a game time decision, but he was practicing, or listed as a limited participant in practice. Now, they don't have Raheem Mostert tonight, which is good-ish for Achane, but there's risk that Achane's workload might not be as heavy as it normally is. There's risk that he could re-injure this ankle tonight. So I think that that's something that you have to consider as well. But the breaking news that we have is Achane is active. Jason, how confident do you feel like we are going to – is Achane 7 for 76, I think, last week, catching the ball? How confident are you in that if you start Achane tonight, you're going to be satisfied with the outcome?
I mean, it's not even to me about confidence, but just I think you have to do it. I looked up to see if there was anything similar last year, and I can't imagine, or I couldn't. I've been so surprised to find week 4 last year against the Buffalo Bills, Devon Achane, 8 carries, 3 receptions, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So I mean, this guy could just do so much with so little. It doesn't really matter. He's so explosive. If you've got him on your lineup, you've got to play him. When you drafted Devon Achane, this was always the bear case against him is the fact that he's either going to pick up an injury, play through injuries, probably not be 100% given his size. And that's the risk that you already accounted for when you put him on your roster. You got to throw him in there. There's going to be points galore tonight. Devon Achane, man.
I think that's the thing that we got to keep in mind is this is not an accumulator. He is not a guy that garners his fantasy value from a lot of volume.
Right.
He's pretty efficient. He's an efficient ball carrier, catching the ball and rushing it. He doesn't need a whole lot of action in order to make your fantasy day. So I have him in, I think, 3 leagues. I'm playing him in all of them. Wasn't that tough a decision. Now, Exotic Lord, who is watching us on Twitch tonight, had a question about starting Devon Achane or Josh Jacobs. Now, this is a little bit more interesting because, and we'll get into the Jacobs angle later on, but consider the Packers starting Malik Willis this week. You would think that there'd be more of an emphasis on the run game, and Jacobs would be more involved than he was last week against the Eagles. First half was really bad for Jacobs in the ground game against Philadelphia. Second half, they changed some things up, and I think he had 10 carries for 80 yards in the second half of that game. He looked a lot better. Are you benching Jacobs in favor of Achane? Again, if you have to sit one of these guys, Jason.
I mean, man, I wish I had that luxury.
Me too. We do this show every week, and some of the questions we get, I'm like, my God, why are they watching us? We should be watching them because they clearly put together better fantasy teams than I do.
Man. Geez. But I mean, I think at that point, you probably have to take the boring route and just go, Josh Jacobs is going to get so many touches in this game. Malik Willis cannot run an offense. Emmanuel Wilson's Emmanuel Wilson, and Marshawn Lloyd might not even play. Mm-hmm. So if you have Josh Jacobs, you kind of got to start him. I'm the way I'm looking at that matchup is that he's going to be the entire offense, 25 plus touches. And I mean, you've kind of got to lean that, even with as explosive Achane is.
What you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. I will differ, and I'll say it's Achane. My concern is with Jacobs so one of the beat writers for the Packers this week who writes for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel said in order for Green Bay to win this game, they're going to have to run the ball 35 to 40 times. Like 60% of their offense should be the ground game. And I say, well, that's probably the case. But the likelihood of them being able to do that, I don't know if it's possible. I think it's one of those things that you talk about that you want to do. I don't know if it's one of those things that you execute. The total on tonight's game is 48.5. The total on the Green Bay game against Indianapolis is like 41. I don't doubt that Josh Jacobs will touch the ball more than Achane. No question.
Yeah.
But I think Achane does a little bit more with it. I lean Achane. You say Jacobs. So go with God, Exotic Lord, on this. And that's the best we can give you here. On YouTube, Camden Christensen. Would you trade I'm assuming J.K. Dobbins for Derrick Henry straight up? Yes, you do that. I don't think this Dobbins performance is I mean, it might have been his best game of the season. Extremely efficient. Gus Edwards actually had more carries than Dobbins. Henry, this is a perfect buy opportunity. I don't know where you stood in on Derrick Henry at the top of the year, Jason, but man, I'm making this trade every single day of the week.
Yeah, me too. I mean, as much as we like what we saw from J.K. Dobbins last week, we also have to understand the circumstances of why he was drafted so late, and that was the injury concerns. Unfortunately, we saw in week 1 as well, even those breakaway runs, it was just like something clicked. He got tackled from behind, like all of the explosiveness zapped after like 15, 20 yards. That's not sustainable over the course of the season. You can take him right now and get a true workhorse. Well, maybe not a workhorse anymore. Maybe that's something we can talk about, but a guy who's going to be pretty efficient. He's going to score the rushing touchdowns. He's going to get enough carries. He's going to get enough points. It's the king.
This is the exact thing that you should be taking advantage of after week 1 is people overreacting to box scores. And I feel like, and Jason, you've been doing this for a while. I mean, we often see a lot of times the overreaction to week 1 costs you rather than rewards you in the long run, right?
Yeah. Or even underreacting sometimes. Last year, I was one of those people that was like, I don't know about Puka Nacua. We'll see.
Yeah.
And then, hey.
Yeah. And Kyron Williams was another guy, too.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think being aggressive with your blind bidding dollars is usually a good thing early on in the season. Mm-hmm. I feel like I am pretty aggressive early on, but then somehow I still end up with money left over, which always irritates me. Yeah. But trading, I think, is like, man, you don't, especially in Dynasty with the FFPC, you don't want to overreact to something that will change your roster, not only this year, but for years to come as well. Yak Benji's watching us on Twitch as well. Start 2 of these guys, Kamara, Jordan Mason, and Isaiah Pacheco. He also has Achane, but he's going to start him, so that leaves 2 spots. So you got to bench one of these guys, Alvin Kamara, Jordan Mason, and Isaiah Pacheco. Now, the Mason thing is interesting because obviously his performance will depend largely on whether McCaffrey is active or not. That is a 1 p.m. game at the Vikings for Jordan Mason. Then you have Pacheco for the Chiefs, who is taking on Bengals. Thank you. And that's 4:25 game. Then the other one is Alvin Kamara, who is battling the Cowboys. Yep, at 1:00. So we will know the status of McCaffrey. How much does that play into this? Which one of those 3 are you benching, Jason, between Kamara, Mason, and Pacheco?
I don't feel great about it. Especially what we saw Ramondre Stevenson do to the Bengals last week. But I'm going to kind of lean, and that might just be what the Patriots want to do, is they just want to give Ramondre Stevenson too many carries. The Chiefs, we saw last week, of course, Isaiah Pacheco gets everything. But I think this matchup against the Bengals is going to be classic playoff football with Patrick Mahomes versus Joe Burrow. At least that's what I'm hoping. Right. And I just think right now, if you have Jordan Mason, you kind of got to start him. And then, of course, as you mentioned, he starts at 1. So if Christian McCaffrey plays, then you can bench him for Pacheco. But I don't want to bench Kamara in a potential comeback scenario against the Dallas Cowboys. That's when you see those Alvin Kamara 14 reception games, So you've definitely got to start him. And then when it's Mason versus Pacheco, I'll just lean with the guy that just absolutely wrecked the Jets last week and with that offensive line.
Camden Christensen adding into that Henry for Dobbins trade. He said, what if he does Dobbins and Jalen Waddle in exchange for Derrick Henry and Chris Godwin? Jason, I'm not the best guy to answer this because I'm a huge Chris Godwin fan for this year. So I'd still rather have the Henry Godwin side of that deal, even though the other side, in my opinion, is getting the best player in Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I mean, if this is Dynasty, I mean, you definitely, I think, want that Waddle side.
Right, yeah, totally. Yeah, if it's Dynasty, I agree.
But I mean, Godwin, we just saw it. We heard all offseason that Chris Godwin was moving back to the slot where we saw the most fantasy success for him. He just looked incredible last week. I know Mike Evans stole the show, but Chris Godwin had all the targets, right? Looked incredible. So I think that you can keep leaning into that. This Buccaneers offense still looks good. Baker Mayfield still looks good. Derrick Henry's still the king. And Jalen Waddle is still behind Tyreek Hill as we speak. And I still don't believe in J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a fun guy to have. And if you have to plug somebody in, then fine. But he's not a guy I want to ever count on, to your point about the injury issues that he's had over the course of his career. Mm-hmm. GoPhoenix.com had this report. Kyler Murray said, it's, quote, not my job to force the ball to Marvin Harrison. Kyler Murray and the Arizona coaches both said that the Buffalo Bills defense made a big-time effort to make sure they were going to take away Marvin Harrison from the offense on Sunday. He had 1 catch, only 3 targets, 4 yards against the Bills. Now, offensive coordinator Drew Petzing told Kyler Murray that not to worry about who to get the ball to and when. Just play your game, and the ball's going to go where it's supposed to go. We, as Marvin Harrison owners, I think I only have him in 2 leagues. It was a little unnerving seeing this, Jason, in week 1. The fact that this guy was, hyped up to the moon, number 4 pick of the draft, best wide receiver prospect in some time, and he comes in his debut and catches 1 ball. How concerned are you with Marvin Harrison right now, given that again, it's his rookie season. It's only one game, but he was a first-round pick in some formats. He was a second-round pick almost everywhere. How do you feel about Harrison now going into week 2?
I think this is one of those cases where you've just got to take the chill pill, relax a little bit, and let football unfold. The good news is they lost this game. They tried a game where they just didn't really feed Marvin Harrison Jr. and they lost. And while Kyler Murray has come out and said it's not his job to force Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball, kind of is, but also Drew Petzing did come out and say that it takes some accountability, the offensive coordinator, and say that I need to also scheme more plays for Marvin Harrison Jr. So I'm just going to take that as the team and organization clearly realizing that this is an issue and that they'll get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball at some point. So I'm not panicking. I'm not panicking. It'll be fine.
And you're still starting him this week in your leagues, right?
I am. I moved him from wide receiver to flex range this week, but it's still he's hitting my starting lineup. You can't bench that type of talent. And I know he's a rookie.
Yeah. The Allwine demotion of wide receiver to flex for Marvin Harrison Jr. I love it. Let's go back to Sergio on YouTube. Jalen Wright and AD Mitchell are available to pick up. Do I pick them up? I don't know how. I mean, this obviously depends on the rest of your team, Sergio. But Jalen Wright is definitely a guy I want to keep around. I just, we'll talk about this in the next segment. That Dolphins attack seems to be able to support 2 running backs for fantasy, and I think Jalen Wright is more than capable of doing that. In fact, he might do it tonight. So yes, I would try to find a spot for him. AD Mitchell is kind of a weird thing because I envision him as being like the sort of the field flipper, the deep threat guy. And that's been Alec Pierce in week 1. And so I don't really know how Mitchell falls into that. I know Richardson missed him a couple of times, one for a wide open touchdown for sure. But Pittman's got the underneath stuff on lock. So I think Mitchell's more of a luxury. I like having him because he's a rookie. He's the unknown thing. We don't know what he's capable of. But if it comes down to these 2 guys, I'd rather roster Wright and Mitchell, especially in a managed team format where I got to set my starting lineup every week.
Yeah, I'm with you step for step. Even if like AD Mitchell breaks out, we just saw kind of an alarm for what Anthony Richardson's probably going to be bringing in terms of the passing game. And that's 200 passing yards off of 9 completions. Yeah. Like, what a box score. It comes out of nowhere. It's electric. But you're probably never going to feel confident starting AD Mitchell, at least this year as a rookie, maybe over time. We did see Alec Pierce struggle the first 2 seasons of his career. Some of the lowest yards and target per route run in the entire NFL belongs to him. And Jalen Wright, I think there's space for 3 running backs in this offense, to be completely honest with you. We saw Jeff Wilson get some carries last week. I think that Jalen Wright was more of a healthy scratch because it was week 1 and Jeff Wilson helps on special teams.
Right.
Jalen Wright brings the same home run hitting speed that Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert bring, but also has size. He's 5'11", he's 210 pounds. He was hyper efficient at the SEC level. He's actually got some durability. And so Jalen Wright is actually one of my most, the highest drafted players I have this season. I'm making sure to roster him everywhere. I think at some point he's definitely going to break out, and it could honestly be tonight. We saw it with Devon Achane, healthy scratch week 1 last year, and then start to show that explosiveness the very next game. So we might be on that same trajectory. I like that player a lot. Definitely get him before tonight's game.
Sergio, I would drop based on the roster that you've shown. I think Lazard and Ezekiel Elliott are even with Elliott playing really well week 1. I'd rather have Jalen Wright on that squad, and I'd rather have AD Mitchell than Alan Lazard. I'm not a believer in that week 1 performance being sustainable for the New York Jets and Lazard. Going to no, you're not. You're going back and forth on that, Jason?
I'm just saying I am one of those people who say that friendship off the field earns targets on the field. And
yeah, there is that.
Rodgers and Alan Lazard or Lazard, they're buddies. They're buddies. They played together a very long time. I don't think as much. I mean, half of his production, the touchdown, and I think half of the receptions came on that last drive with Tyrod Taylor, and it just seemed like a dink and dunk. Everything was available to them. The 49ers didn't really care about stopping them at that point. Right. So I think that's definitely unsustainable, but I mean, he's still going to be one of Aaron Rodgers' looks, I think, at least.
And there is something to be said for that as well. And I was talking with Mike Kuzma, who won our mid-stakes contest in 2016 on one of my other shows. And he said, yeah, he liked the Lazard performance too, but in a managed league, it's like, God, I'm just not going to know when to start that guy. Best ball would make sense. And I'm kind of with him. Like, Lazard is the type of guy that if I had him on my roster, I'd feel okay in a situation where I was missing guys due to injury and bye, and I'd flex him out no problem.
Yeah.
And if that situation is likely to present itself, and Sergio, you know your league better than we do, so then that would make sense that you want to keep Lazard around for that. Puka Nacua, news on him coming from Greg Beecham, who covers the Rams. Sean McVay saying that Nacua could miss more than 4 games while on injured reserve. McVay said Steve Avila, Joe Noteboom, who also got placed on injured reserve, and Puka Nacua have unique injuries that could keep them out longer than that. Now, Nacua had a sprained right PCL in the loss to the Lions. That was the same knee he hurt during training camp. Obviously, you're not watching the show to say, well, do I start Cooper Kupp now? Yes, you start Cooper Kupp. You start Cooper Kupp every single time out. As long as he's active, you're starting. What my question to you is, what are we doing here with Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson? I got that name right. Tyler Johnson?
You did.
Yeah, thank you. Tyler Johnson and Demarcus Robinson. I'm still Team Robinson, but Johnson did outperform Robinson in that game. 5 for 59, I think he had.
Yeah.
I look at these two guys going forward. One of these guys is going to be the number 2 receiving option on this offense. Mm-hmm. And that's valuable too, the way that the Rams throw the ball around. If you only had one roster spot available for one of these Rams receivers, Jason, who's it going to be?
We might go hot take here. We'll go 2 answers. We'll say if it's just a shallower, normal type of fantasy football league, probably Demarcus Robinson. He's familiar with the system. He's had the success before. But if you're looking for that true lottery ticket, it's Jordan Whittington. That's the, he stood out in the preseason. This year's rookie is really good after the catch, was a standout at Texas on a team with A.D. Mitchell, Jatavian Sanders, and Xavier Worthy. So a pretty good athlete, looked good in the preseason again, and actually scored a touchdown last week, but it was called back because of a penalty. So
right.
To already see that usage in week 1 to me is pretty it gives me some confidence in him. And I think that we could probably see some more usage now that Puka Nacua is out. I think that Sean McVay will probably creatively work him into the game plan.
And maybe the other guy too. Do I have him on the rundown later on?
The tight end?
Colby Parkinson.
Yeah.
Ran, I think 40. Did I see the stat right? 40 or 41 routes this past week, and catches 4 balls on 5 targets for 47 yards. Maybe that's the guy, especially in a tight end premium format like the FFPC. Maybe that's the guy you got to make sure I know he's rostered on a bunch of leagues, but maybe not all of them. That's a guy that you got to pick up.
Yeah, I agree. He at Seattle, his stats never really screamed at you from season long, but if you ever watched Seattle football, you would always see a Colby Parkinson. Like, he's like the Jawan Jennings of the Seahawks. Like, he's got that clutch factor, just shows up randomly. And the Rams saw that too much that they decided to swoop him and give him the bag. They gave him a pretty hefty contract, and we saw the usage week 1. I think that makes him pretty viable, especially with what we saw from Tyler Higbee over the last few seasons.
Yeah, that's very true. Excellent point. T. Higgins did not practice on Wednesday, and he spoke with reporters, or ESPN actually, saying today that he is not faking his hamstring injury and doesn't understand why people think he is faking his hamstring injury, given that the extension that the timeline to get an extension for a contract that's passed, and now he's playing on the franchise tag this season. Higgins is a guy that obviously he's trending towards not playing this week. Is there any value in looking at a guy like Andrei Iosivas as a flex, or am I just digging too deep for week 2 on the season, Jason, where there are no buys? Most teams are relatively healthy, and Iosivas, while he did get 3 for 26, 6 targets in the game, the Bengals offense doesn't look that great, and I don't know if I trust Iosivas in my starting lineup right now, even if Higgins is out.
Yeah, you can't trust him in your starting lineup. Definitely worth still holding on your bench. I was a bit disappointed, to be honest. But they fell flat. I don't think many people predicted the Patriots to go in there and just totally dismantle that team.
Yeah.
So we can give it another chance. And again, this should hopefully be a shootout against Kansas City. I really hope so.
You would just think, like, Cincinnati, Kansas City, it should be a big time game.
Please.
It's weird. The Burrow wrist thing, that's popping up again as a talking point. I still think he's all right. All right enough, I should say. I didn't go and watch all the throws that he made that game, but he's still got Jamar Chase. He's still got a decent running game behind you. That offensive line's improved. Even without Higgins, I still think the Bengals can do numbers against Kansas City, even as good as that defense looked against Baltimore. Jonathan Jones reported that Rome Odunze did not practice again today. In fact, both he and Keenan Allen were not available to practice Wednesday or Thursday. Odunze is dealing with a low-grade MCL sprain, and it sounds like he is not going to be available this week. And Jason, quite frankly, I don't know if you want to wait around on Allen or Odunze since they are in the Sunday night game this week, which is going to make it extremely unpalatable to wait around for both of these players. Does that mean fire up DJ Moore? How are you handling your Chicago receivers? And I don't know what your ownership percentage is on these guys, but how are you handling all three of those receivers this week based on this injury news from Odunze and Allen?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, well, maybe not thankfully, but thankfully for this week, Caleb Williams looked awful last week, and so you probably didn't have much confidence in starting these guys anyway. I do think, of course, now with DJ Moore probably being the only guy, you should probably fire him up and just bet that Caleb Williams figures it out. I mean, he was the 101 for a reason.
Right.
And just as an aside, my flag plant was Rome Odunze, so I'm getting a little nervous.
Listen, that still could be right. I mean, it's still very early in the season, but I'm with you on Odunze. I was, the one Bears receiver I was not excited about this year was Keenan Allen, and the fact that he's dealing with this heel injury that ended his 2023 season is more than a little unsettling. So for me this week, I think if you have to make a decision, especially let's frame it like this: what happens if you have Odunze? What happens if you have Keenan Allen and your next best guy is a guy like Khalil Shakir or Keon Coleman who are playing tonight? I think you got to play those Bills receivers tonight, Jason.
Oh, man.
It's a tough, it's a gut-wrenching decision. But if those are your next best options, and then think about this, like let's say you don't play those Bills receivers this week, and you're hoping for the best on Allen and Odunze. And then what if your next best option is like A.D. Mitchell or Yoshibus, who we just talked about, or, Darnell Mooney or somebody like that? Because then at that point, you're like, oh, God. And oh, by the way, you'll certainly have to make a choice on those players on Sunday afternoon at some point because the Bears play Sunday night. This has just got yuck written all over it. I don't feel great about it.
No, yeah. It's hopefully you have some better options than Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman out there, but it's not the end of the world.
Right. And I guess, and the other thing to keep in mind, too, okay, so really the only receiver that you may have on your bench or that you might be able to pick up after Sunday night or during the Sunday night game, they play Houston. So Dell, Diggs, and Collins, they're all rostered. Yeah. Philadelphia, you probably only want to play A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith. You don't want to play Dotson. So and they play Monday night against Atlanta, who does have Darnell Mooney. So maybe Mooney is the guy that you could pick up and hopefully start. But this is kind of messy. And I really don't feel great about Odunze or Allen playing this week.
Yeah, I don't either. They shouldn't, and so I just hope they don't. I especially think in Rome Odunze's case, given he's a rookie, just let him be healthy so we can not lose a season. Right. Whereas at least Keenan Allen, he's just on the 1 year. If they really need to throw him out there, he thinks he can play through it, let him go out like a champion, but please rest Odunze at least.
Yes, exactly. Jordan Addison did not practice Wednesday. I'm going to look for the report to see if he practiced today. I'm betting that he did not practice today. He's dealing with an ankle injury that, quite frankly, when I saw him leaving the field, I'm like, this looks pretty serious right now. He did not practice again today. Significant soreness in his right ankle is what's being reported by Andrew Kramer. The wideout was able to play after he got hurt in week 1. He came back, but it doesn't appear likely that he's going to be playing this week. We're playing Justin Jefferson no matter what. I saw Jalen Naylor being picked up in a few high-stakes leagues this week. Yeah. If Addison is out, we're just playing Jefferson, right? We're not trotting out Naylor against the Niners.
No, I don't think you can. I get the argument, but no, I don't think you can. What's more likely? Jalen Naylor has a good game or Sam Darnold looks like Sam Darnold again against the 49ers defense? Come on.
This is the Sam Darnold revenge game, right? Wasn't he a Niner?
Yeah, but it could also be framed as the 49ers defense revenge game, maybe, although they're probably not mad at him. But still,
probably
glad he's gone.
One of the interesting things that we noticed here, by the way, let's get a couple more chat room questions here on Twitch. The Chosen One, start Olave this week. And Olave was a guy I was not very bullish on at the start of the season, and it hasn't really changed a whole lot. I don't think I have him in any leagues right now. And I think you could make the case that you could bench him this week. Let's say you're in a league where you start 2 receivers and a flex. I mean, if you have like maybe you went receiver heavy early, maybe you have Cooper Kupp and Mike Evans, and maybe you got Rashee Rice later on and got the discount on that, or Pittman or Devonta Smith. I mean, I think all those guys are better than Olave this week. So I think more often than not, I'm still playing him this week, but I could definitely see scenarios where I would bench him, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, he's got Trayvon Diggs to worry about. Pretty shadow-heavy corner that locks him down. So, and didn't look good at all,
right,
at least in terms of the volume. So that's fine. It depends on what your other options are. It sucks to have to bench your second-round pick, but you mentioned Rashee Rice. A lot of people were able to get him at a good value. Lots of other wide receivers out there you could start.
Rehan M18, trade Rashee Rice or Marvin Harrison. I have 2 separate answers for this. In Dynasty, I'd rather have Harrison than Rice. In redraft, I think I'd rather have Rice this year than Harrison. Again, we don't want to overreact to week 1, but Rice looked awesome. Doesn't sound like he's going to be suspended. Harrison didn't look all that great. Rice, to me, is an integral part of that offense that's going to be involved no matter what. And we saw that no matter what happened for Arizona against Buffalo, and they couldn't get Harrison going.
Yeah, no, I'm with you step for step. I still want Marvin Harrison Jr. in Dynasty. Rashee Rice is still going to get suspended at some point, and I'm sure that Xavier Worthy's role will continue to grow over his career. So I would definitely like to get into Marvin Harrison territory, but in redraft, like you said, you got to go with Rashee Rice. It might take some time for Marvin Harrison Jr., unfortunately.
Yasmin like on YouTube, trade Jaden Daniels for Drake London, Zach Charbonnet, and Matthew Stafford. He does have Fields on his team as well, so it would be Fields and Stafford. When you look at that trade, I assume JD5 is Jaden Daniels, right, Jason? Yeah. I mean, I single quarterback. I love waiting on quarterback. Now, Stafford and Fields does leave you a little bit bare at quarterback. However, you're getting Charbonnet, who's an injury away type guy that might have standalone value. You're getting a replacement quarterback in Stafford, and you're getting a guy who went in the second round of most FFPC drafts this year in Drake London. I think I love Jaden Daniels. He's my most owned quarterback. I still think I make this trade and figure out quarterback later, given what I'm getting in return.
Yeah, I mean, like in single quarterback, I think I'm with you, especially it looks like he has Kenneth Walker. So to go ahead and get himself some Charbonnet on the team, that's pretty good. I mean, and then Matthew Stafford threw the ball almost 50 times last week. I mean, that's incredible volume. And I'm sure Drake London will have some weeks.
Let's go back. Let's see. Rehan M18. Is Jameson Williams legit this year, or should he trade him now for somebody like Amari Cooper? Now, Amari Cooper did not exactly have the greatest game, and part of the reason I think was the quarterback issue with Cleveland. And it sounds like it is more than an issue with Deshaun Watson right now. In that game against Dallas, where Cleveland just basically got blown out, Deshaun Watson in that game, 24 of 45. He threw 21 incompletions, 2 picks, failed to touch 170 yards. Amari Cooper, 9 targets, only caught 2 of them for 16 yards. Jameson Williams looked the part. Now he's dealing with an ankle injury right now, and we'll see what happens going forward, especially this week. But I was such a huge fan of Amari Cooper this year, so it's going to be very difficult for me, Jason, to say, oh, I'm off Cooper now. Give me Jameson Williams, who went many rounds after him in drafts. I'm not there yet. So for me, I'm declining that trade. I'd still rather have Cooper, but boy, another weekend or another week of what we saw from Jameson Williams and Amari Cooper, I might be changing my mind pretty fast.
I am unfortunately the biggest Jameson Williams.
Are you really?
In the entire world, I think. I really do. I've been sticking my neck out for him even since his rookie season.
This is the year for you, Jason.
I'm feeling so good. You have no idea how good it feels. So I do think he's legit. I think the writing's been on the wall that he would break out at some point. The coaches were saying it. He was showing up in the NFC Championship. Putting in the work. I think Jameson Williams is legit, and to get yourself attached to that Lions offense that's only ascending somehow even more. Yeah, I want him on my team at really whatever cost.
Our good buddy Dom Gazzetti, who I hung out with in Louisville at the KFFSC, and plays in a ton of FFPC leagues. I'm assuming this is an FFPC question. He's got Trey McBride and George Kittle in a league, along with Brian Thomas, and he's toying with the idea of benching Kittle this week in favor of Brian Thomas. I can support this, Jason. because Kittle is so hit or miss for me. He's the most inconsistent tight end among the elite tight ends out there. And Thomas looked really good last week. So, I look at this week, and if you're thinking like Thomas over Kittle, I can definitely support that.
Yeah, I think
even in tight end premium,
I think, like you said, George Kittle is very boomer bust, but man, you do not want to sit him on those boom weeks, and he kind of busted last week. And I know that's the gambler's fallacy here on the Better Network, but hey, I think Kittle and the Vikings sounds right to me. And Brian Thomas Jr. is a rookie. I think has just as much of an argument to potentially be boomer bust. And say what you want about the Browns offense, the defense is still pretty good, even if the Cowboys embarrassed them last week.
Derek on YouTube, Achane starting tonight, which is, I guess we don't know that he's starting. We know he's active. We assume he's starting tonight. He has Jeff Wilson, and he's got Jalen Wright, and he's got Devon Achane. Would you drop Jeff Wilson to pick up Tyler Johnson, to pick up Tank Bigsby? I think, and this is kind of a cop-out answer, I kind of want to see what happens with Wilson and Wright tonight. Like if Wilson's still getting all the touches and stuff, then you really can't drop him. Maybe you could start thinking about dropping Jalen Wright, because this is a great opportunity for him tonight. And I wouldn't want to do it, but this is what we'd be thinking about. When you're considering, I wouldn't do it for Johnson. Bigsby is a little bit more interesting because he's clearly the injury away type guy that you want in Jacksonville. But I would be in a holding pattern until I see what happens tonight.
Yeah, I get that. Tank Bigsby would be the one that I'm eyeing there. I think you are right, and especially since he already has this Dolphins backfield, just ride it out. But if there was a move to make, it would be Tank Bigsby. I'm of the camp. Like I said, I think Jalen Wright's going to end up being a big part of this offense. They traded next year's third round pick to move into the fourth to get him. So clearly they are invested in him. And I think that Jalen Wright will be the next man up. Personally, but we haven't seen it yet, so it's very hard to go off of that. So you probably just have to hold until it unfolds.
I want to step out and take a quick break right now because we're a little bit over time. When we come back, JD Nolan 97, we're going to answer your question about potentially benching Jalen Hurts or Jaden Daniels. We're also going to get into Elio's question about Achane versus James Conner tonight, because it's our Thursday night football preview tonight. We're talking about how to handle that Dolphins running back situation. We know Achane's playing. Does Wright or Wilson factor into your flex? Plus, we'll talk about Keon Coleman versus Khalil Shakir. And what the heck happened to Dalton Kincaid last week? Is it going to happen tonight, too? We'll analyze that and much more. He's Jason Allwine from Player Profiler. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. You're watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network.
The Bears have to be one of the most inept franchises of any sport I've ever seen in my entire life. And they share the city with the White Sox, who are also inept. Like, that is how bad the Bears are. I just don't understand how you can go your entire existence and the quarterback that wins you a Super Bowl is Jim McMahon. You couldn't find anybody else.
They don't have a good history with quarterbacks, and they let him be the quarterback for a long time, too.
Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes right there. And you drafted Mitch Trubisky. They were right there. I there's a lot of pain in being a Falcons fan. The Bears are one of the teams I could argue they might have it worse, and they have a Super Bowl. And when the best quarterback in the past 50 years is Jay Cutler, you have a problem.
That's so funny that you just said that. We were talking about Jay Cutler the other day, me and my friend, and I was like, yeah, he was on, because we were watching the Colorado Rockies game against the Giants, and it looked like he was behind the thing. I was, yeah, well, he played for Denver most of his career. We looked it up. Chicago let him be their starting quarterback way too long.
Here's the thing, too, is that Jay Cutler wasn't bad. Like, he was erratic. He wasn't terrible, though.
The poor man's Brett Favre.
I'm taking him over Justin Fields. I'm sorry.
I would.
But Jay Cutler led that team to an NFC title game.
Yeah,
that they lost to Green Bay, but he's gotten farther than anybody else. You want to know who the other starting quarterback was for the Bears in the other Super Bowl appearance they made? It was Rex Grossman. What are we doing out here? It was Rex Grossman and Kyle Orton was the backup. How are you that bad? Bro, like, oh my God. Listen to the top 5. According to Football Reference, the top 5 greatest Bears quarterbacks of all time. Jay Cutler, number 1.
I can't believe it.
Sid Luckman, who last played in 1950, is number 2. Jim Harbaugh is number 3. Jim McMahon, the Super Bowl winner, is number 4, and he played there for 6 years. And Mitch Trubisky,
no way,
is number 5 on the list as terms of passing yard go.
It is time to play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. Lineups are locking for the Thursday Night Weekly Challenge in about 35 minutes. Go to myffpc.com or scan the QR code there. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. You pick whatever players you want. 10-team lineup or a 12-player lineup. If you want to play with kickers and defenses, you can only pick one player per NFL team. $35 or $200 to enter. You can win up to $2,500. 10-team, 30-team, and 100-team contests with the classic or slim format. myffpc.com. Or scan that QR code. I'm talking with Jason Allwine from Player Profiler and the Wake and Take Show on the Player Profiler Network. Follow him on Twitter at JFootballWine. It's so good to have so many messages and questions tonight in the chat. And I want to lead things off here before we get into our Thursday Night Football preview. JD Nolan 97. Am I being stupid for thinking about benching Jalen Hurts for Jaden Daniels this week? Eagles, I think, will win games, but first month will be shaky, and Daniels is against the Giants. Number one, you are definitely not stupid for thinking that. I think sometimes we get caught in ADP and where we drafted these players a little bit too much. That game for the Eagles and Jalen Hurts, they are at home against the Atlanta Falcons on Monday Night Football. They're 6.5-point favorites. Total on that game is 47. And if we look at Jaden Daniels against the Giants, the Commanders are actually trying to find out the spread on that one. They are 1.5-point favorites, total of 43 against the Giants. So you look at that, yeah, Daniels should be good. I don't think the rushing yardage is necessarily going to be duplicated against New York this week, Jason. I think it's fine to consider it, but even after I consider it, I'm still landing on Jalen Hurts here.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have to, but I will say this. I mean, Justin Fields, say what you want about Justin Fields as a passer. He ran the ball 14 times against the Falcons last week and only managed to have 57 rush yards. That is kind of unbelievable to me. And the Falcons made a lot of moves on defense this offseason. It's very, very likely that this is just a stingy defense. Mm-hmm. And so we might see that unfold, in my opinion, really. I think that this could end up being kind of a defensive slugfest, really. And Jaden Daniels going against that terrible Giants team, I think could run wild. And there's also the fun narrative. If you're one of these people, he is going up against his former teammate Malik Neighbors. There could be a little bit of just a sense of pride in this game for both of those players to perform a little bit better. And so I might honestly lean Daniels, which might be crazy, but I think that this Falcons defense might actually be good.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's crazy. I mean, I think that you can make a case for Daniels for sure in this game. So Jason is going Daniels. I'm still going Hurts. If the question is, are you crazy? You are not crazy. If the question is, do I start him? Well, we have differing opinions on that. But, we'll see. But here's the thing. Like, if you do end up playing Daniels over Hurts, I don't think it's like, oh, my God, I can't believe you did that. I definitely can see why anybody would do that. This is going to lead us into our Thursday night football preview between the Miami Dolphins and Buffalo Bills tonight with Elio 13 question. Should I play Connor or Devon Achane tonight? Connor is at home against the Rams, and obviously Achane tonight against the Buffalo Bills. That game is in South Beach. So this is a little bit more questionable, right? Because James Conner doesn't have the game-breaking ability that Achane does, but man, Connor was heavily involved last week. So I think this is kind of like, how risky do you want to play it, right? The reward and the higher ceiling is definitely with Achane. So if you're going for broke, then yeah, it's Achane all the way. But if you're a little bit more conservative, Thursday night, a lot of stuff can happen. You want the more steady Eddie guy, then just wait on Connor. That's how I would look at it. to me, I still think I'm playing Achane, Jason, but I'm open to being sold the other way.
No, I think I'm gonna lean with you here. I know I took Josh Jacobs earlier, but this game, the Rams Cardinals on Sunday, I think that is probably going to be more so a Kyler Murray than James Conner game. At least that's how I'm picturing it. Mm-hmm. And like you said, Devon Achane, just such a game breaker. And while, I mean, like, this was up to question, he did practice pretty decently this week. I know he had full availability during the media portion on Tuesday's practice even. So I don't know. I think you got to just go with Achane here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think what gets to be more interesting tonight, and we talked about this. I want to get back to something you said earlier. This Dolphins offense has shown that it can support 2 running backs and minimum, because you said you see a path where the Dolphins running back or Dolphins offense can support 3 running backs. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, last year we even kind of saw it where like Raheem Mostert was active, Jeff Wilson was active, Salvin Ahmed was active, and they were all kind of getting this opportunity. And what we saw in week 1, Jeff Wilson did mix in. Now, part of that was due to injury, but what I think that is drawing my eye a little bit more is Devon Achane's usage in the slot. I think that there's going to be a lot of time where Devon Achane's lined up in the slot and there's a different running back in the backfield. And his receiving production, Devon Achane, I think is going to help him be very viable. And I think that that's just going to leave the door open for the other running backs to mix in here and there as well. And they're just so explosive, all of them. And then what we're seeing with just Raheem Mostert already picking up an injury, Devon Achane probably playing through an injury now. There's just going to be games where, like what happened with Raheem Mostert last week, even if he comes back the next week, he still misses a couple quarters and someone has to go mix in as well. So I just think that they really want everyone in there mixing in, staying fresh, keeping the wheels hot, and hitting those home runs that they all do.
What about if you're looking to flex one of these guys tonight, because we know Achane's going to get his, are either Wilson or Wright flex worthy for you tonight? And like, just think about it as a FFPC starting lineup, right, where you only have to start 2 running backs, but you could flex out 4 running backs if you wanted. Would Wilson or Wright land on your flex radar against Buffalo tonight with no Mostert?
I don't think so. I think like if you're building like truly a DFS lineup, I might take some swings on Wright just because that's going to be a player that probably not a lot of people are putting into their lineup. But yeah, I can't do it for my actual managed leagues. I think I'd like to see it unfold. And I mean, we haven't had as many injuries pile up yet. Like for the most part, our roster should be fully healthy. That hopefully you're not in dire straits having to pull off those moves. But if you're in a deeper league, like I said, I'm putting my conviction on Jalen Wright. I think that he's going to see more opportunity than Wilson. We'll see. Maybe a bold claim right before kickoff.
Right. Well, the other thing I want to bring up, the other thing I want to bring up is, and I'm trying to find it right now, and JD Nolan 97, if you can cite the source, that'd be good. Oh, I think I found it. I think it's Omar Kelly here. So Omar Kelly, who covers the Dolphins for the Miami Herald, just tweeted out or posted on X 15 minutes ago that Achane, it looks to him, has been very restrictive of his movement during warmups. And Kelly said he's either preserving his steps or he's going to be extremely limited tonight. Does that change anything? This again, it's one report that's out there from Omar Kelly, but I'm assuming he's down on the field seeing this. Does this change any of the way that anything about the way you're seeing Achane tonight?
I can't bench Devon Achane, man. I really can't. I'm gonna lean in he's resting. I'm gonna lean in he's saving his movements, not trying to risk anything before the game.
Here's my whole thing, and you can definitely poke holes in this argument. I don't know why they would have him up and active unless they plan on using him a lot. I think that Mike McDaniel is creative enough. Jeff Wilson is enough of a veteran. And Jalen Wright is talented enough that if they really didn't think Achane could give him anything tonight, they would just roll with Wilson and they would just roll with Wright. And they would have Tagovailoa peppering the ball to Hill and Waddle tonight. So I still believe that there's a reason Achane's active, and I'm still believing in him. It will be I can't think of a running back that I was playing behind Achane that I would now start over him based on this news, if that helps at all. JD Nolan 97. My guess would be Jeff Wilson maybe used towards the red zone. I could see that because obviously you get hit a little bit more there. And Wilson, I mean, Permar 99, I don't know where he is tonight. Normally he hangs out in the chat. But he said on our Tuesday night show that I do, he's like, this could be a layup for Wilson being the goal line back in this game. Now, I don't usually like to start guys based on being the goal line back, but I really believe that McDaniel and the Dolphins brass and the coaches believe that Achane has something to offer tonight, and that's why he's in there. So I'm still playing him. I'm with you.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Moving on to Micah Gary. He has to start one of these guys in PPR. Chuba Hubbard, Jaleel McLaughlin, Jeff Wilson Jr. tonight, or Rico Dowdle. We'll get in. I think we'll talk about McLaughlin a little bit later, but I think that's an interesting dynamic that's going on there with Javonte Williams and McLaughlin, who outperformed Williams, but also made his share of mistakes in that game too. And then Hubbard, we, again, no Jonathan Brooks this week, so Hubbard will get all he can handle. He has to pick one of these guys. I probably lean towards McLaughlin, but man, that's close.
That's where I'm leaning to in this PPR. I mean, we saw him get more snaps than Javonte Williams last week and more usage. He is the clear pass catching running back. Let's go there. And talk about a difference. Earlier we had to decide between Josh Jacobs and Devon Achane. Now we're deciding between these guys. That's why we love fantasy football.
Yeah. That's why we love it and why we hate it. Why it's so maddening too, right? JD Nolan 97. Yes, we know goal line backs win games. I just don't like to base my lineup decision solely on that. And that's what we'd be having tonight with Jeff. I shouldn't say that solely because he'll catch passes too. What is this now? We have Spubsy. He has to start 3 receivers. He lost Puka Nacua. Malik Neighbors was added to the injury report today with an injury, which is never good. He has Rashee Rice, Tank Dell, and A.D. Mitchell. Does he trade Patrick Mahomes for Joe Burrow and Marvin Harrison Jr.? I do kind of like the idea of having Marvin Harrison Jr. on my team as a buy low, but I don't know if I'd give up Mahomes to get it, given that I already have Malik Neighbors on this team, and he has to start 3. I mean, Dell, Rice, Neighbors. I think you can make that work. Ham and egg it. As long as you have Patrick Mahomes, things will be good. So I would not make that deal, Jason.
Yeah, I cannot trade Patrick Mahomes this season. This seems like the year we're finally getting like Patrick Mahomes back to being like a fantasy guy.
Capital letters Patrick Mahomes for the first time ever.
Exactly. Like, it's been a minute. It really has been a minute since we're reminded of how good he actually can be for fantasy. So I think this is the year you latch onto that guy.
What do you make of, and we'll get back to our preview here, what do you make of Jonnu Smith? This is a player that I know a lot of high-stakes players were excited about getting as a backup tight end this year. I don't know if I'd play him tonight. He didn't have the greatest of games in week 1, but now no Raheem Mostert this week. Does that shift anything for you tonight with potentially flexing out Jonnu Smith again in a tight end premium league as your second flex?
I don't think so. I mean, like, unfortunately, like, I understood the upside case for Jonnu Smith. Like, finally, like, Mike McDaniel's getting an athletic tight end. Like, maybe they'll finally use the tight end position, but it just really seems it's not a part of his scheme. Right. And it's just like, it might happen like it happened last year with Jonnu Smith. He might, for some reason, take a 75-yard screen to the house and ruin all of Kyle Pitts' manager's days. And that might happen here. Miami might have some weeks, but I really don't know if you're ever going to like know when to start him. And so I would honestly, especially in dynasty leagues, like if you can get like any rookie pick, I might just kind of rid myself.
Yeah, I would too. No question on that. We've been talking about the Dolphins a lot, Jason. We have not talked about the Buffalo Bills. Yes, there is another team playing tonight. And we'll talk about them now. I want to start in the backfield. James Cook last week, 19 carries, 71 yards. Ray Davis only gets 3 carries for 13 yards. Ray Davis also did catch a pass, but James Cook caught 3 for 32 as well. Is the impact that Ray Davis is having on James Cook, have we overrated that during drafting season? Because in this first game, it at least to the naked eye, it didn't look like it affected Cook all that much. How concerned are you about Ray Davis's presence on James Cook when both these players are healthy?
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those people that was a bit worried about the type of usage that Ray Davis could take from James Cook. And I still think over the course of the season, we will see those frustrations come to fruition. However, it's still early in the season, so James Cook should still get the majority of the opportunity. But you got to remember, I mean, Ray Davis had over 1,000 yards in the SEC last year. and actually led all running backs in college football in receiving touchdowns, which is never really what you want to hear. And we actually saw in week 1 a designed wheel route for him that he snagged. It was an awesome catch. It was really, really cool to see. Had a couple carries as well. I think that's going to steam up over the course of the season. We saw the Bills need a second running back behind James Cook last year with Latavius Murray and Ty Johnson, and even bringing in Fournette at some point. Like, I do think Ray Davis is going to have an impact. It just might take a couple more weeks than we maybe hoped for.
I want to go out to Twitch here. iRomy has to bench one of these receivers. Xavier Worthy, Terry McLaurin, Jamison Williams this week. McLaurin at home against the Giants. Xavier Worthy at home against the Bengals. Jamison Williams at home against the Buccaneers. Now, Jason, I know you're saying, well, I'm for sure starting Jamison Williams. Who's the other guy that you're starting here? Which one of these three is on the bench if you're running iRomy's team?
Yeah, it might be Terry McLaurin. I don't have the box score in front of me, but I don't think he was utilized as much as we wanted him to be. I think it was only around 4 or 5 targets, if I'm remembering correctly. And in this game against the Giants, we talked about it already a little bit. I think that this is going to probably not be one where the Commanders have to pass the ball a ton. It's a really bad defense. They should get ahead, I think. So I think I would take the potential shootout with the Bengals, throw Xavier Worthy in there. I mean, he was so explosive in his limited opportunity. And Jamison Williams also, we just watched the playoffs, right? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers Lions. It was an incredible playoff game. Probably going to be another good game on Sunday. So I think that I would just roll with the 2 big playmakers versus the guy with the floor and just hope they blow up again.
I do have Terry McLaurin on a good number of teams this year, not a ton. And I can tell you I was disappointed. Yeah, he only got 4 targets, as you said. 4 targets, 2 of them he caught for 17 yards. I'm willing to bench him if I have that explosive, if those both explosive playmakers. I was not a Xavier Worthy guy. But man, when I saw him run that first touchdown in on Thursday night, I'm like, I may have missed the boat on this guy, because Andy Reid is creative enough and Patrick Mahomes is good enough that regardless of if he's getting open downfield or not, they're going to scheme him not only ways to get involved in the offense, but set him up for big plays. Yeah. So it's tough for me to bench him. So yeah, I think I'd lean towards McLaurin here. iRomy saying McLaurin probably has the best floor of the 3. But he's willing to go with the upside. Yeah, don't start lineups based on being scared. Start lineups being bold. Let's be bold. Let's have fun.
Let's start getting right tonight. Let's just do it.
Exactly. Yes. Truer words have never been spoken. So yeah, I think that's why you sit McLaurin and you see what happens this week. But Worthy and Williams is what we're saying. Getting back to the Bills, Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir are 2 interesting players this week. And I said kind of earlier in the program that depending upon what your situation is with some of these injured receivers, you may have to play one of these Bills receivers tonight. Yeah. Keon Coleman saw 5 targets last week. He caught 4 of them for 51 yards. Khalil Shakir caught all 3 of his targets for 42 yards, and he gets in the end zone here. Do you have a preference on if you can only start one of these guys, or maybe a better question, if you can only roster one of these guys, who would you rather have on your team? Coleman or Shakir, who has the best night tonight and who has the best season for Buffalo this year, Jason?
Answering the best game tonight is going to be tough for me. I'll go ahead and say I was avoiding the Bills' weapons this offseason. I looked at the weapons and what I thought would happen, and I just felt that Josh Allen would spread the ball around with no true alpha. And I just never really felt comfortable taking shots on anyone. But Khalil Shakir's value kind of was pretty much, if I had one, that's who it would be. But after week 1, I mean, Keon Coleman ran 100% of the routes, had 5 targets, brought in 4 of them, had the 51 yards, was getting open. Josh Allen asked the team to draft him. Yeah. So I think that's the guy you got to roll with rest of season for sure. And then why not just roll with him tonight? Khalil Shakir only had an 80% route participation last week. So that 20% more routes for Keon Coleman. Go with that.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on Coleman over Shakir. I am playing Shakir in one league, and actually, okay, this is interesting because I am playing Shakir in one league based on my nervousness of Keenan Allen right now. At least if it's the league I'm thinking of, it's that's why I'm playing him tonight. So Khalil Shakir, I have him going in a dynasty league where I'm sitting. The other guys I would consider, well, Hollywood Brown, I don't think is going to play, so he's on the bench easily. But I'm playing him over Jaylen Warren and I'm playing him over. Well, technically, I'm playing him over Jordan Mason right now. But if McCaffrey's indeed inactive, I can easily put Mason in over Javonte Williams. So maybe it comes down to Khalil Shakir or Javonte Williams. Which one would you rather play if that was your choice at flex?
Could I maybe say Jalen Warren? What you said earlier?
Well, you can. Yeah, we'll throw in Jalen Warren in here. Sure, he's playing Javonte Williams this week.
Yeah, I'm not a big Jalen Warren guy, but to excuse last week, he was battling a hamstring injury. I believe still battling a hamstring injury.
Yeah, I think that's
maybe
right.
Not, but it's probably getting better.
It would have to, right?
So it's probably getting better, given he didn't see much usage. So, and I think that the Steelers are going to dismantle this Denver Broncos. Like, I really like. If I am Bo Nix, I am not sleeping this week because T.J. Watt is going to be tackling me 100 times on Sunday, and who knows how many fumbles that leads to. I don't know. I want the Steelers backfield this week, though. Is kind of what I'm saying. I think that they're probably going to have a decent floor. So maybe before you change your lineup, maybe double check if Jalen Warren's been practicing.
I'm gonna do that right now. Actually,
I'll put it up too. But I think that last week isn't truly indicative of what the Steelers want to do with their backfield split. I think that we could see more Warren going forward.
Yeah, I know a lot of high stakes players were on this guy the last month and a half of drafting season. Mm-hmm. Mike Tomlin said 2 days ago. That Jalen Warren's hamstring is healthy enough. Well, if it's
you don't want to hear that.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a Steelers head coach. I mean, you sort of have to, put that vibe, put that front out there that it's healthy enough. So, well, I mean, we'll see what happens with that. But if I do put Warren in right now, that does give me some options for Sunday when it comes down to Williams, Mason, and Warren. So thank you for that, Jason. I appreciate it. The last player I want to bring up here in our Thursday Night Football preview, Dalton Kincaid. What in the heck happened? I think this is a larger commentary, not only on Kincaid's 1 for 11 performance on 2 targets, but, man, a lot of the top tight ends did not have great games. Kelsey, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, Kincaid. A lot of these guys were no bueno in week 1. Kincaid tonight, is this a guy that you would still be, again, tight end premium format, is this a guy that you still got to roll out there against Miami and see what happens?
Yeah, I think you have to, especially in tight end premium. And if you drafted Dalton Kincaid, you probably don't really have many better options. You probably waited, maybe got like TJ Hawkinson just in case or something. Like your best option is probably Colby Parkinson right now, more than likely. And so you've just got to roll with Kincaid. Fun fact about the tight ends. Only one tight end of the top 12 ADP scored a touchdown last week, and his name was Kyle Pitts. So pretty fun one right there. But Dalton Kincaid, if you have him, you got to start him. This is, though, like if it's another dud week, it is seriously time to sound the alarms because this like screams a matchup where he should be able to at least bounce back a little bit. I know last week that's kind of where the defense's attention went was to Dalton Kincaid. So maybe with Keon Coleman now kind of breaking out a little bit, these other guys stepping up last week, like maybe Kincaid could find some more opening. He ran 100% of the routes last week. So that should give you some confidence, but still only 2 targets. Literally.
Sorry to interrupt, Jason. The lost tape on Twitch, Keon Coleman or Tony Pollard here. Pollard is facing that New York Jets defense this week. I think I lean towards Coleman.
Yeah. No, Pollard. Give me Pollard. Sorry.
Why is it Pollard? Well, okay. I guess we should talk about the Jets defense. I expected their rush defense to be a lot more stout against the Niners and Jordan Mason, and it wasn't. Is this a larger problem? Is that why you're saying Pollard here?
Yeah, that. And I mean, I like Tony Pollard a lot already. And we saw last week that he basically, he had the lion's share of the opportunities for the Titans. Tyjae Spears was pretty much irrelevant for the most part, at least in the run game. And I mean, what Jordan Mason did, a lot of that's the San Francisco 49ers and run scheme. Like, let's be honest there. But the Titans, they got J.C. Latham. They did shore up that offensive line. And Tony Pollard's a great pass catcher too. I think that he'll be leaned on a decent bit and give you enough of a floor to where, Keon Coleman, I think you're depending on the ceiling, whereas Tony Pollard, I think the floor is good enough.
I think you're right. I think you're spot on there. And that is all the players I wanted to talk about in our Thursday Night Football preview. That game getting underway in the next 10 minutes. Jason and I will take you through the first quarter, roughly, tonight, as we will go all the way to the top of the hour here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. If you want to get into the FFPC Weekly Challenge, the Thursday edition, those lineups will close in about 10 minutes. Scan the QR code that our producer Matt Deutsch has on the screen. Go to myffpc.com. There's no draft or salary cap. You can literally build this team in a couple of minutes. There's still time. $35 to $200 to enter. You can win up to $2,500. You can play with or without kickers and defenses. myffpc.com is where to go for that. In fact, when we come back, we're going to go through Jason Allwine's weekly challenge team that he has built for this format tonight, and you can either enter it yourself if you want to copy what Jason has, or maybe take a different take on it. It's all up to you. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network rolls on right after this. Let's hear from Bob Harris earlier this drafting season.
We're telling ourselves happy stories about players we want to pick, less happy stories about players we don't want to pick. And part of that is being ready to abandon our own carefully crafted narratives when it's time to abandon them, right? Like, bail, this was not working, So like we come in with super hard opinions, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. The better fantasy players are the people who acknowledge quickly that, hey, this isn't working out. Doesn't mean you have to abandon a player, but it means you have to abandon the approach, and maybe you have to go with a different player. I mean, if people were playing Stephon Diggs last year down the stretch, they were only playing him because his name is Stephon Diggs. You have to be ready to acknowledge, hey, this guy's not getting the job done. I did it. Bloom and I had a big discussion about this last December, and I'm saying you can't play him right now, right? And I know that's a hard decision to make, because why? FOMO. We're going to miss out on that big game. The minute I sit this guy down, he's going to have the big game. Well, maybe. But also, while he is not having great games, there are other guys on your roster having great games. And I think that's to me, the hardest thing about fantasy is like, when do I divorce myself from my narrative? When do I tell when do I acknowledge my happy story is not coming true? I need to figure something else out. And the people who are good at that are the people who are good at fantasy football.
McMillan is this year's Puka Nacua. He's everything you want in Rome Odunze at half the price. Now, this could be true, but we have the opportunity of more than just a few characters. We can go deep in this. Why is Jalen McMillan, and in what sense is Jalen McMillan this year's Puka Nacua?
Listen, Washington, they had some stud wide receivers, Odunze, McMillan, Jalen Polk that no one's talking about right now. And somehow McMillan has been completely overshadowed because of what his teammates were able to accomplish. As for slot receivers, he's right up there. He's one of the smoothest operators out there. But people forget that before his injury last season, in those first 3 games, he was right up there with Odunze as far as yards and touchdowns were concerned in those first 3 games. The season prior, he had more receptions. As a sophomore, more yards and higher yards per route run. Praise Odunze all you want. Yeah, you should. He deserves the praise. But McMillan is going to be a great offer later on in these drafts. I'm getting those Puka Nacua type vibes out of him. And when I say Puka Nacua, he's going to be this year's Puka Nacua. It's not like he's going to go out there and put up 1,500 yards and be an all-pro. No, I'm talking about exactly what is going on here when the people are getting negative about this comment. You're already looking down on McMillan. And not one damn person out there, and I'll say this right now, no one had Puka Nacua as the wide receiver run in the rookie class last season. I guarantee you. Why do I guarantee you? Because I got him at 408 in a draft. That's where I'm going with this. Jalen McMillan is a guy that you're getting at the end of the 3rd round or in the 4th round of your rookie drafts that is going to give you production. He's going to be one of those wide receivers. You're like, oh, crap. All right, excellent.
Seven minutes until kickoff here on Thursday Night Football. You are watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. He is Jason Allwine, the social media director and host of the Wake and Take show on the Player Profiler Network. Follow him on the X at JFootballWine. We have done a pretty good job of covering the Thursday Night Football game. What I want to do right now, Jason, is get your weekly challenge entry. The FFPC Weekly Challenge can be played by anyone at myffpc.com. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. Pick your 10 players or your 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses. 1 player per team. Enter for as little as $35. Win up to $2,500 now. myffpc.com. Scan the QR code, or myffpc.com is where to go. Now, in this format, the lineup that you have to put together: 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 1 tight end and 4 flexes. You want to throw in 5 tight ends? Do it. You want to do 6 receivers or 6 running backs? Do it. You want to do 2 quarterbacks? Well, you can't in this format. You can only play 1. But it's still fun to think about. So, Jason, you put together a team here this week for the weekly challenge, and I want to get your take. We'll start off. Should we just go right down quarterback, running back, receiver?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, might as well.
Okay, let's start off at quarterback. Who is your quarterback for week 2?
Yeah, so I went with Jaden Daniels going up against those New York Giants. We talked about him already earlier in the show, but basically, I mean, I think that he should be able to run wild against this terrible defense or pass wild. Either way, I expect this to be a pretty easy game for the Commanders' offense. And I guess I'll just say my kind of strategy for this. I've actually never done the FFPC Weekly Challenge for some reason. This was really cool to put together.
It's something
so
we just launched it last year for the first time.
Okay.
We hadn't done it before, so this is the second year of existence. So yeah, no worries. There's a lot of people that have never tried it yet.
But yeah, it was cool. Like only being limited to 1 player per team actually kind of made me start at the schedule and just be like, what's a player from this team I would want, and then kind of work backwards from there. And I also looked at Player Profiler Weekly rankings a little bit, and we actually have Jaden Daniels at quarterback 5. And there's no other Washington Commander I want. So.
and that's the great thing about this. I mean, this mirrors our world famous FFPC playoff challenge that we do at the end of the year, where you can only pick 1 player per team for the duration of the playoffs. Yeah. This year, or this format, at least it's 1 player per week. But that's interesting that you decided to look at the schedule first. Do you think it was easier putting together a lineup that way, where you're looking at, okay, I love this team. I shouldn't say this team. I love this matchup. Now, who are the players I would trust in this matchup? That's sort of the approach.
That's exactly what I did. Yeah. Or like if I saw a game script, like for my running back, we talked about him earlier. I just feel like Josh Jacobs is going to get a ton of volume, and I don't trust any of the Packers pass catchers. So if I want a Packer, it's going to be Josh Jacobs. And if I think that, that they're going to be able to run against this team, then it's Josh Jacobs. So I threw him in there. We'll see.
Iromi saying good pick with Jaden Daniels to lead things off here. So that's good. Your number 1 running back, Jason, who do you have?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's not number 1. I guess I'll go ahead and tease it. All 4 of my flexes are running back as well.
Oh boy. Here we go. Okay. So let's do this. Let's do receiver next. Now that we know that you have 6 running backs on the team. So let's do receiver next. But hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think it's interesting to do this in this format. Now, I wouldn't recommend it in the playoff challenge. I wouldn't recommend it from a season-long perspective. This is 1 week. So we don't necessarily care about running backs being healthy, right? Because you only have to stay healthy for 1 game. So loading up on the running back position, the position that should get the most fantasy goodness, right? The most opportunity, that almost seems like a smart strategy. Was that the plan going in, or did it sort of just happen this way?
Yeah, I guess. And I probably should have looked into the prize structure maybe, but I just felt like the running back's going to have a lot of floor. And we saw that they also have a ton of ceiling too last week from a few of these players. And the ones I chose are all like genuine, get all the opportunity running backs. I'm not going to get cute with it and be like, let's throw Gus Edwards into here. Right. We don't have to do all that. But yeah, so the running backs I chose, they're all workhorses. You guys will love them.
All right. So before we get to running backs, let's do receiver and tight end here. Let's do tight end actually first. Okay. Who was the tight end that you picked for this squad in a week after, when a lot of the tight ends, I can't remember who pointed it out. Yeah, Iromi wasn't even the top tight ends. The position as a whole in week 1 was bad. Who's bouncing back for you this week, Jason?
Yeah, so I was going to start with Kyle Pitts because I'm a Kyle Pitts stan. I love the guy. But the Eagles have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and some athletic linebackers. So I think that could be pretty tough for him actually this week. And so I'm going right back to the old Travis Kelce bag of tricks in this game. If I'm not going to take Patrick Mahomes, I might as well throw Travis Kelce into my lineup. Like I said, I feel like the Cincinnati Bengals matchup should be a fun one. And I feel like Travis Kelce is probably not going to have many back-to-back 4
bunkers
games. Yeah. Probably not many 4-target games, let alone back-to-back. So I could see Travis Kelce kind of come alive in week 2 against these Bengals.
And that is one of the higher totals on the week, that Bengals Chiefs game. In fact, it's not the highest. I think the highest is Tampa and Detroit. But this is second high. Oh, no. Second highest is tonight, Buffalo and Miami, but third highest is the Chiefs and Bengals. So you're going with Travis Kelce there as your tight end. Okay, let's move over to wide receiver. Who are the wideouts you have? Who's wideout number one?
We'll stay in that game. Jamar Chase, baby. Jamar Chase. Last week was a weird one. Hadn't practiced all offseason, but actually did run over 90% of the routes for the team. I know it didn't really show up too much for our fantasy teams, but he still scored 12 points in full PPR. Still had 6 receptions. So I think that we should still see Jamar Chase production. And if T. Higgins is going to be out again, I know that regardless of Jamar Chase's contract situation, he and Joe Burrow want to beat the Chiefs. I really do feel that Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are going to show up for this game. So the 200-something yard 3 touchdown game was against the Chiefs a couple seasons ago for Jamar Chase. I know it's a couple seasons ago, but you can't. I mean, you have the opportunity to get Jamar Chase on your team. You should do it.
So Chase and Kelce in that same game. Now, you can't stack players, but you can definitely stack players in the same game on opposite teams, which is exactly what you did. Okay, so now you have a situation where you can't pick any more Bengals or Chiefs anymore. Who's your second wide receiver, Jason?
Yeah, so we might end up having to change this given he popped up on the injury report, but I was going with Malik Neighbors in that same game against the Commanders. Again, I talked about it a little bit at the beginning. I felt that Malik Neighbors and Jaden Daniels, college teammates, they're going to be fired up a little bit going against each other. They have the bet, with each other about who will be the offensive rookie of the year, off the field, which I'm surprised is even legal. But whatever. So I if he's active, I think that he could get a ton of opportunity, especially I think the Giants will be playing from behind. I did see someone in the chat before they signed out, JD Nolan, said look for Devontae Smith this week. I actually do agree with that. So that I think is a great pivot given he plays Monday night. The Falcons are good against number 1 wide receivers. AJ Terrell is a lockdown corner. So I think if a Eagle is going to pop off, it would be Devontae Smith. All
right, real quick because they're about to kick off. AM 427, pick 2, Devon Achane. I'm assuming that's DJ Moore, David Montgomery, and Jerome Ford. I'm going with Moore and Achane there, right? Yeah, Moore and Achane. Yeah. AM 427. Hopefully we got in before the buzzer as they are just kicking off in Miami now on Thursday Night Football. We'll give you all the updates on that as we build this weekly challenge week 2 lineup for Jason Allwine here. So officially it was going to be Neighbors, but we're going with Devonta Smith here, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not really trusting that injury report thing. I mean, I guess you can't change your team later, can you?
Well, it depends. Do you have any Bills or Dolphins going tonight?
No, I didn't. I know that it was in there for the rules, but I didn't know if we'd get there at the point in the show or not. So I was like, I'm not. I saw that there were 2 tournament options here, so I went with the one that's Sunday, Monday.
Right, exactly. So let's do this. You have no Bills, you have no Dolphins. We're going with Malik Neighbors, but the pivot is Devonta Smith if we get bad injury news on Malik Neighbors. And that game, I should look this up. The Giants play at 1:00, and the lineups will lock at 1. So you will know whether Neighbors is active or not.
Perfect.
So we have Devonta Smith as the pivot on Monday night at home against the Atlanta Falcons. Okay, the people have been waiting. Let's hear these running backs, Jason, that you have lined up this week. Go in any particular order.
Okay, we'll start with Bijan Robinson. I don't know if I have to make an argument for it, but Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the Monday night game. I always like to say the stars come out at night, and they play great under the lights. Bijan Robinson is definitely going to be that player. So yeah, I'm down for Bijan Robinson at Philadelphia on Monday Night Football.
Yeah. Then we'll go with Breece Hall.
Breece Hall, another great pick. Breece Hall, who ended up with several catches, like with 4 or 5 catches on Monday night.
He had 10 touches in the first 2 drives. It kind of slowed down after that because they fell behind, but he's clearly a huge part of this game plan. And Braylon Allen didn't see the field until the game was over. Like, I was actually kind of surprised to see that. Like, Breece Hall was getting everything. So I want him in this Titans game.
We have an Achane sighting. Jalen Waddle catches the first pass from scrimmage for 3 yards. Achane then rips off a 6-yard gain. Alec Ingold from Wisconsin. I've had him on my local show here before. He gets the first down, and then Achane promptly runs for a 3-yard loss. So he is being involved, at least early on. We'll see if that carries through. Breece Hall, remind me, at Tennessee this week, right?
I'm not sure if it's at. I just wrote versus, but yes.
Okay. So he's taking on the Titans, and quite frankly, with the Titans, it may not matter where they're playing that game with as bad as they look. The other, they really stole. The Bears really stole that game via defense and special teams too, and we'll get into a Caleb Williams conversation later on. But boy, that he has me worried for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall are your top 2 running backs. We have the core. Now we just need the flexes, and you have already told us they are all rushers.
Yes. 2 in the same game. So why don't we start there? Josh Jacobs going against the Colts. Jonathan Taylor going against the Packers. This should be 2019 in a bottle. I'm excited.
So this is a game where I think I mentioned this before. One of the lowest totals of the week. And you say, oh, why would you want running backs in that game? Well, low totals usually mean a lot of running.
Yes.
Or a lot of passing incompletions. In either sense, it's not going to affect Jacobs and Taylor adversely. It should only positively affect them. Yeah. So we could see these guys combine for, I guess it's possible they combine for 35, 40 carries in this game between Taylor and Jacobs.
Yeah, maybe 50.
Maybe 50. There's a non-zero chance of that as well. The thing is with the Packers, like I think Wilson looked pretty good in that first game against Philly. But Marshawn Lloyd's going to gum up the works there. But the Packers do have 3 running backs. Again, Lloyd, it's his first game. They have 3 running backs capable of carrying the rock, and they might have to use all 3 to keep all 3 of them fresh by the end of the game. On 3rd and 13, Tua Tagovailoa, I can't see who the pass was intended for, but it basically bounces off his hands, and it is picked off by the Buffalo Bills. So the Bills get the first turnover of the game. Oh, it was intended for Grant Dubose, former Green Bay Packer, intercepted by Ingram from the Bills. They have the ball now, 1st and 10 at the Dolphins 37, and right away, Dalton Kincaid, a 9-yard catch. Nice. He's almost already eclipsed what he did in week 1. He's getting involved early as the Bills now have it 2nd and 1 from the Miami 28. Okay, we've got Robinson, Hall, Jacobs, and Taylor. Who are the other running backs we have on this squad?
I do want to say I have a first quarter Josh Allen rush touchdown prop.
Oh,
engaged.
Spicy. Okay, so now this is interesting. The thing is with Allen, he doesn't need to be at the goal line to do it. Like you get this guy like 15, even 20 yards out. He's a threat. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so I think I also parlayed it with a Tyreek Hill first quarter.
Oh, wow. What odds did you get on that?
It was one of the underdog no sweat bets. So I was like, I'm going for the throat.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. We have a first down from James Cook on a 4-yard run. And then Dalton Kincaid, once again, an 8-yard catch. They are down to the 16 now. It is 2nd and 2 from the 16. And we'll be watching for Josh Allen maybe making a play here. Jason, who do we have as the other 2 flexes here?
Also mentioned kind of earlier in the show, very briefly, Alvin Kamara going up against the Cowboys. Tough game for Chris Olave, I'm assuming. Rashid Shaheed, may get some of those deep shots. Who really knows? But I think that the Saints are going to have to run through Alvin Kamara if they want to keep this thing competitive. I think that this will be one of those just massive target games for him. So I want him on my team. Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. Kamara is a guy that did not look threatened by Jamal Williams, and Dennis Allen just hates Kendra Miller. So this is a guy that I was nervous about because of how long in the tooth he was getting, and now I'm a lot less concerned about that because they're using him, and they're using him a lot. 3rd and 2 now for Buffalo at the Miami 16 as Ty Johnson loses a yard on a carry, and it was a Josh Allen incompletion on first down. Your final selection, Jason, for your flex play tonight.
The king himself, Derrick Henry, going up against the Raiders. I think that this is a game that screams Derrick Henry, right? John Harbaugh came out this week and said that they don't want to give Derrick Henry 20 carries a game all the time. He's done that before. They want to have games where he has 20 carries. They want to have games where he doesn't, right? And so I think that this is one of the ones, right, against this Raiders team. I don't think they're going to be able to keep up with this Ravens. I think we could see a vintage Derrick Henry game, if you will.
So they always look good on paper, but this team really looks good on paper.
It really does.
Jason Allwine's FFPC Weekly Challenge, which you can still submit because this is a Sunday lineup, so you have all the way up to 1 o'clock if you want to duplicate this lineup or if you want to tweak it. You have Jaden Daniels at quarterback. The receivers are Jamar Chase and Malik Neighbors with the pivot to Devonta Smith if you are feeling a little gun-shy about Neighbors or he's ruled out or inactive for that 1 o'clock game on Sunday. The tight end is Travis Kelce, and then we got running backs galore. Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, and Derrick Henry, and that is the lineup. If you want to join the league, the weekly challenge, scan the QR code that Matt Deutsch has at the bottom of the screen, myffpc.com, myffpc.com. That's where to go, or scan the QR code, and you can enter for as little as $35 and earn up to $2,500 in this format. I want to go back to a couple of things that we did not get a chance to talk about in the first segment, and I want to start off with the Seattle Seahawks. Tyler Lockett was limited in practice yesterday. I'm looking up his current practice schedule today to see if he was out there. But Tyler Lockett, on things I didn't envision would be a thing this season, Tyler Lockett leading the team in catches, receiving yards, and targets against who did they play last week now? I should know this. Why don't I know this? Denver, thank you.
That's right?
Yes, he had 6 for 67. We do have a touchdown here. It is not Josh Allen with his legs. It is Josh Allen, a 17-yard touchdown to James Cook, and the Bills strike first here with Buffalo on top, now 7-0 after the Tyler Bass extra point is good. I must be sucking up all the internet to do the show because my Amazon Prime Video just locked up, so I didn't get to see it, but I'm following it here as the Bills take a 7-0 lead off the Tua Tagovailoa interception, 9:49 to go in the first quarter. What do we make of Tyler Lockett? I mean, is this a thing? Metcalf was not great. Jackson Smith and Jigba, one of my most favorite receivers in draft season this year, Jason. 2 catches in this game. This kind of caught me off guard because I thought Lockett was clearly the number 3 on this team. Not so fast, my friend, as Lee Corso would say, because Lockett was the best receiver on the field for Seattle on Sunday.
I mean, that's just Tyler Lockett, man. That's just Tyler Lockett. I think that it's inevitable, right? Like he's
Thanos. He's the Thanos of the Seattle Seahawks.
He's the Thanos of the Seattle Seahawks. I will say this, he comes and goes. Like next week, he'll probably only have like 3 targets. We'll have a DK Metcalf game or something like that. And as it pertains to this injury, Tyler Lockett's one tough son of a gun. He appeared on 1, 2, 7, 8, 9 injury reports over the last 2 seasons and didn't miss a single game. So even 5 injury reports with a hamstring strain and played through those. Not many players do that. So I think he'll be fine. But maybe that means good things for your Jackson Smith and Jigba. Maybe he'll just be out there, but not really catching the ball. Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, this is such a weird situation. I have Lockett on a couple of my dynasty teams because I could never get good value for him in trades. So I'm just, riding him out. I did the same thing with Hines Ward many, many years ago, and it worked out for me in a great way. Would you guys trade Devontae Adams and Keenan Allen for Cooper Kupp and Deontay Johnson? That is a question for Sebastian. This is a non-dynasty full PPR league. He'd be giving up Adams and Allen. He would get Kupp and Johnson. I think I'd make that trade.
I might make this trade without Deontay Johnson.
So just get Kupp. Because you're getting the best player in the deal in Kupp.
Yeah, I mean, Deontay Johnson's a cherry on top, but honestly, you're probably not going to be comfortable starting him for at least a few more weeks. The Panthers did not look good.
Yeah.
But I am terrified about what Brock Bowers did last week to Devontae Adams in terms of being the target leader for the Raiders as a rookie tight end in the first week of the season. I drafted a lot of Devontae Adams. I'll be honest. I thought that this was going to be another season. Gardner Minshew only throws to his wide receiver ones, but I know this could be a week 1 overreaction, but that's a lot of production for a rookie tight end, especially with an alpha like Devontae Adams out there. I'm concerned. And then Keenan Allen's already picked up an injury.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. And he's an older guy and it's an injury that he's been dealing with for a while and it's flared up again, which is never good. Brock Bowers, 8 targets, Devontae Adams, 6. Adams goes 5 for 59, Bowers 6 for 58. And they all took a backseat to Jacoby Myers, who had 61 yards receiving, too.
There you go.
I don't think I have Adams. I wouldn't say I'm overweight on him, but I have a healthy amount of him on the team. And again, like you said, we're not trying to overreact here. But for Bowers to do what he did in his first game as a pro, a little disconcerting if you are a Devontae Adams owner. Let me throw this at you regarding the Christian McCaffrey injuries. We talk a little Niners football here. He was limited in practice again today, second straight day. Ian, as my good friend Steve Zabin, who is on statewide Wisconsin radio, would say Ian Rappaport is reporting that it might be doubtful that McCaffrey suits up this week. Mm-hmm. And I think Adam Schefter was saying the same thing.
Yeah.
If that's the case, well, if that's the case, you play Jordan Mason, you don't think twice about it. What if McCaffrey's active? Does Mason, is he still a flex given how good he was last week? Given that they may not want to give McCaffrey a workload, am I getting a full workload? Am I getting too cute with maybe wanting to flex out Mason?
Oh man. I mean, when you originally asked that, you saw I shook my head. I was like, no, you can't play Jordan Mason. I mean, I would assume if Christian McCaffrey's active, he's Christian McCaffrey, but this would be the matchup against the Vikings to kind of ease Christian McCaffrey back in and still utilize Jordan Mason a decent bit. It's definitely like less exciting, but depending on your other options, I do think that's definitely reasonable. Shanahan came out and said that if this was a playoff game, Christian McCaffrey would have played. So that means that he's probably healthy to some degree.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like if he's active, he's Christian McCaffrey, but the argument in this matchup, I do think makes enough sense to where you could just be like, yeah, we could probably flex Mason here.
Is there any reason not to buy what Shanahan is selling regarding if it was a playoff game he'd be playing? Because we don't really know. We're just going off what he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I like to just kind of take these guys for their words. I know that they could screw us over in that regard, but
right.
I mean, like there is actual incentive for teams to use their IR spot. So if they were actually worried about Christian McCaffrey, they would have thrown him on there. They would have cleared up a roster spot. They would have been able to elevate someone from the practice squad. They wouldn't have had to cut Cody Schrader,
Right. Yeah.
So I think that he will return inevitably. I think for me, I am eyeing next week. They have a divisional matchup against the Rams. That seems like a nice, let's bring Christian McCaffrey back game.
Mm-hmm.
They have to kind of win that one. So that's probably where my head's at, is they probably do still sit him this week.
We talked about, I said I wanted to touch on the Broncos ground game a little bit later on in the show. That time is now 10 carries for 27 yards for Jaleel McLaughlin.
Yeah.
In the Broncos loss to the Seahawks. He caught 5 balls, but only for 1 yard. I'm not thrilled with the output, but I am pretty intrigued by the usage. Yes. That's 15 touches for McLaughlin. And in that game, and I had it up briefly here, I'll try to bring it up again. In that game, he definitely outtouched Javonte Williams, who was the presumed starter in that offense. Javonte Williams touches the ball 9 times, 1 catch for 0 yards, 8 carries for 23 yards. Audric Estime just got placed on IR, so that's one less guy to worry about in this backfield. McLaughlin is an interesting player this week. He's probably already rostered in most leagues. He's definitely in all FFPC leagues. But what about him as a starter this week? Could we flex Jaleel McLaughlin out based on the usage of what he got this previous week as Denver is hosting Pittsburgh in the Mile High City?
I think in full PPR leagues is probably where I'll draw the line. I don't think I want him starting in half or even standard leagues. What works in his favor is the fact that Bo Nix and Sean McVay are kind of check down artists, in the way the system is designed. So Jaleel McLaughlin will probably always get his in the passing game, especially as it pertains to the Broncos offense, more than likely always in catch-up mode. We saw how bad they looked, and that's probably going to be the case rest of season. I still have high hopes that Bo Nix could end up being a good NFL starter, but it's not a great offensive line. He really doesn't have the best of weapons. They're going to be catching up, and that benefits the pass catching back in Jaleel McLaughlin, who averaged 5 yards a carry last year, had 31 receptions, was phenomenal in college, has really good burst and speed. So I think that this is a player, if you want the Denver Broncos backfield, you might as well get in on.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of backfields, Marshawn Lloyd is probably going to be joining the Green Bay backfield for the game against Indianapolis at Lambeau Field this week. Mm-hmm. Now, this is not official because Lloyd has just gotten in limited practices so far, and Emmanuel Wilson did look pretty good this this past week against Philly. I think it's a trap to want to flex out Lloyd or Wilson this week, given that it's very nebulous of what their usage is going to be. And given that, I touched on this at the earlier part of the show, Green Bay is going to want to run. Whether they're going to be able to do that successfully, I have my doubts. And that's why I think it's fine to start Josh Jacobs. I have no problem with that. But when it comes to Lloyd and Wilson, man, I'm staying away.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will say, if Marshawn Lloyd was dropped hastily this week, you need to throw your fab at this guy. I mean, I know that's already passed, but if he's still available, you need to pick him up. I would still even be sending some trade offers out for Marshawn Lloyd. I had the privilege of going to the Senior Bowl this year. Absolute stud. He averaged 17 yards a catch at USC last year, so he's a really phenomenal pass catcher, has great explosiveness. Of course, the injuries are concerning, but that's why they rest. That's why he was out last week. So hopefully he can get back, and I do think you need to get him on your rosters before it's too late.
Yeah, that explosiveness that he has, I mean, that Josh Jacobs just doesn't have that. Aaron Jones represented a certain amount of big playability last year that I think Jacobs has a little bit, but not to the degree that Jones does. Lloyd might have that to that degree. Now, he doesn't do everything else that Jones does really well, but he's a guy that you have to have on your roster. And if anything were to happen to Jacobs, Lloyd is definitely a start, but I'm staying away from him this week. Final point I want to bring up in this segment, David Njoku is not playing week 2 against Jacksonville this week. He is not being placed on IR, and I think it's Jordan Aiken is going to be the guy that steps in. Now, no normal shows, most shows will not even bring up Jordan Aiken because it's like, who cares? But this is a tight end premium format sponsored show with the FFPC. Jordan Akins, 3 catches, 27 yards on 4 targets. He was added in a few leagues. How confident are you with Akins this week as a secondary flex? Do we need to stay away based on how bad that Cleveland offense looked?
Yeah, I can't trust anyone catching balls from Deshaun Watson. I'll stay away from that.
So, and that game is a 1:00 game where the Browns are 3-point dogs. 41.5 is the total on that. So that is something that we will look to not be utilizing, at least in week 2 lineups. We'll see what happens with the health of David Njoku's ankle as it goes forward here. Let's step out and take a quick break here. Final break of the night. When we come back, I want to do some rapid fire starter stats. Rapid fire is in quotes because we won't go rapid fire on all of them, but we will get into players like Aaron Jones, Jaden Reed, we had a question about earlier, Cade Otton, and of course, Jared Goff, and much more. You're watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. I'm Eric Balkman. He's Jason Allwine for Player Profiler. We finish strong. Up next.
The Bears have to be one of the most inept franchises of any sport I've ever seen in my entire life. And they share the city with the White Sox, who are also inept. Like, that is how bad the Bears are. I just don't understand how you can go your entire existence and the quarterback that wins you a Super Bowl is Jim McMahon. You couldn't find anybody else.
They don't have a good history with quarterbacks, and they let him be the quarterback for a long time too.
Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes right there, and you drafted Mitch Trubisky. They were right there. I there's a lot of pain in being a Falcons fan. The Bears are one of the teams I could argue they might have it worse, and they have a Super Bowl. And when the best quarterback in the past 50 years is Jay Cutler, you have a problem.
That's so funny that you just said that. We were talking about Jay Cutler the other day, me and my friend, and I was like, yeah, he was on, because we were watching the Colorado Rockies game against the Giants, and it looked like he was behind the thing. I was, yeah, well, he played for Denver most of his career. We looked it up. Chicago let him be their starting quarterback way too long.
Here's the thing, too, is that Jay Cutler wasn't bad. Like, he was erratic. He wasn't terrible, though.
The poor man's Brett Favre.
I'm taking him over Justin Fields. I'm sorry.
I would.
But Jay Cutler led that team to an NFC title game that they lost to Green Bay. But he's gotten farther than anybody else. You want to know who the other starting quarterback was for the Bears in the other Super Bowl appearance they made? It was Rex Grossman. What are we doing out here? It was Rex Grossman, and Kyle Orton was the backup. How are you that bad? Bro, like, oh my God. Listen to the top 5. According to Football Reference, the top 5 greatest Bears quarterbacks of all time. Jay Cutler, number 1.
I can't believe it.
Sid Luckman, who last played in 1950, is number 2. Jim Harbaugh is number 3. Jim McMahon, the Super Bowl winner, is number 4, and he played there for 6 years. And Mitch Trubisky,
no way,
is number 5 on the list as terms of passing yards go.
High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network rolls on. And for any of you playing in the FFPC Weekly Challenge, which you still can play in with the Sunday lock at 1 p.m., myffpc.com, win up to $2,500, enter for as little as $35. You may be excited that we have another touchdown in the Dolphins and Bills game tonight. Tua Tagovailoa finds Devon Achane in the flat, and he escapes. I don't know who the safety was, but he slipped on the field. And he enters the end zone, 5-yard touchdown catch. It is now 7-7 after the Jason Sanders extra point with 3:21 to go in the first. And we have our producer, Matt Deutsch, in at a Ray Davis anytime touchdown plus 800. Jason, you're a fan of it.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, hey, these are the games, right, where you just see Ray Davis touchdown. You know what I mean? Like the divisional matchups, the touchdown vulture. This screams one of those to me. You know, we'll call it third quarter, 3 minutes left. They just hand it off to Ray Davis on the 3. He scoots it in.
Similar to how that, by the way, those are the dulcet tones of Jason Allwine. You hear him on Wake and Take on the Player Profiler podcast, Player Profiler Network, each and every day in the morning. Great way to start off your day at Player Profiler at J Football Wine on the X. The other thing I'll bring up here is I'm getting the vibes on this game similar to the vibes I got in the Thursday night opener with the Chiefs and Ravens, where I'm like, man, this is going to be a good game. Henry scores the touchdown, and then Worthy runs it in. Now we see the interception. Then we see the James Cook touchdown. Now we see the Achane touchdown. I feel like this is going to be a really good game tonight. So hopefully, and we'll cover it for you for the next 19 minutes, but then we got to go and watch this game with you all. I think it'll be fun to get into some starts and sits here, Jason, for situations that are facing many FFPC high-stakes owners this week. We'll kick it off with 3. We'll do 3 at each position. We'll go running backs, receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks. And we've been getting a lot of them on Twitch and YouTube tonight. So shout out to everybody watching us there. Thank you so much for your participation. You make the show a whole lot better, too. J.K. Dobbins or Aaron Jones? We'll kick things off with that. I have a thought on this, but I'll let you weigh in on it first. J.K. Dobbins this week is going up against the venerable defense of the Carolina Panthers on the road, so they do have to go across the country to play him. Aaron Jones is at home, but he's getting the San Francisco 49ers. Your thoughts here, Jones versus Dobbins?
Yeah, when I first saw this question, I was like, oh, easy Jones.
Easy Jones, yep.
Easy. But I think you've got to ride J.K. Dobbins until the wheels fall off, right? I know we kind of dissed him earlier in the show, but the Panthers just lost Derek Brown, their defensive tackle, for the entire season. The Saints just put up 47 points on him. Until J.K. Dobbins gets hurt, he's going to be productive on this Chargers offense. They're going to run the ball a lot. So I'm going to lean him because I am just terrified if this 49ers matchup. Like I said, I think Sam Darnold turns back into Sam Darnold in this game. There's no way he has that high of a completion percentage again, especially against this vaunted of a defense. So I think it's going to be difficult for Aaron Jones. I understand he owns a larger share of the backfield, but I don't like that matchup.
Yeah, think about that, going from the Giants defense to the Niners defense in consecutive weeks. I hear what you're saying, and it makes perfect sense. And this is why we have people on like Jason Allwine, because he is a strong man. I am a weak man. I am not strong enough to start Dobbins over Jones. I'm still going to roll with Jones this week. The thing is even if Darnold is not as good down the field, I still do think that the Vikings are going to they have a pretty smart guy as a head coach there in Kevin O'Connell. I think that they're going to find a way to get Jones involved in the game, similar to Jefferson. They're probably not going to win the game, but I'd be willing to bet that Jefferson and Jones still both have solid fantasy plays. Dobbins was hyper efficient with his carries, but he only had 10 of them. And I know this is Carolina. It's a great matchup. Unquestionably, the better matchup is Dobbins. I lean towards Jones here, but I respect what you're saying with Dobbins. Okay. Najee Harris or Jordan Mason. Does this just come down to whether McCaffrey is playing or not? If he's playing, you play Harris. If he's not playing, you play Jordan Mason over Harris?
Yeah, pretty much. We talked about it a little bit earlier. I do think Jaylen Warren will get worked more in as he heals back from the hamstring. So I don't think what we saw of Najee Harris totally owning the backfield is what we'll see rest of season. So I mean, it is still only week 2, so it still probably is more Najee Harris. But what Jordan Mason did last week with that offensive line in this running scheme, you've got to lean into that as long as you can.
We had a question earlier, Keon Coleman or Tony Pollard, and I think you said pretty solidly it was Pollard, right?
Yeah. Did Coleman just score?
No. No. I shouldn't say no. I shouldn't say no because I'm reloading my Prime once again. It looks like Josh Allen actually fumbled.
No.
On 3rd and 1, but he recovered it, and then he threw an incomplete pass. So the Bills have punted it to the Dolphins. Still 2 minutes to go in the first quarter, but the Josh Allen first quarter thing is not looking good right now. The Dolphins now have it from their own 17 with 2 minutes to go in the first quarter. So that's where we're at on that. Still not impossible, but highly improbable right now. But it happens. The great thing about this is you have 3 more quarters of fun, Jason, that you can definitely chase. So you said Coleman, or you said Pollard over Coleman. What if I said David Montgomery or Tony Pollard this week? And I think that's more interesting, given that they both play the same position. Tony Pollard at home against the Jets. David Montgomery is taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home. And I want to point this out, the highest total of any NFL game this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you were to ask me, is David Montgomery going to score a touchdown or whatever, I would probably say no when I look at this game, even with that high point total. The Buccaneers do one thing very, very well. In fact, they're one of the best teams in the entire league at that, and that's stopping the run. And that's mostly due to part their defensive tackle, Vita Vea. I mean, he is just an absolute beast and does not let people get past him. Brian Robinson only was productive last week because of what he did in the receiving game. He only had 40 rush yards, no rush touchdowns. So I'm going to lean Tony Pollard in here. Again, we talked about it earlier in the show. Jordan Mason ran wild against them. Tony Pollard owns this backfield right now. Should have some pass catching upside as well. So I'll go Tony Pollard in this one. Because David Montgomery wasn't even really good that last week until the overtime.
Until the very end. Yep. That's when he dialed it in. Yeah, I'm not as sold as you, but I definitely am leaning towards Pollard over Montgomery here for sure. So wide receivers, let's move on and talk about them. I think I know which way you're leaning here. Deontay Johnson this week for the Carolina Panthers taking on the Chargers. And then you have Xavier Worthy, taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. We lean towards explosive playmakers before. That's what Worthy is. Deontay Johnson, the more trusted, high floor accumulator, for lack of a better term, for receiver here. Are we still taking Worthy over Johnson?
Yeah, I've got to see Bryce Young put together a football game before I can trust any of his pass catchers. Especially, I mean, last week, I think Xavier Legette actually led the team in targets. It wasn't DJ. So we'll go with Worthy again.
There was another, and I'm trying to find it here in the chat. I'm scrolling down, and I apologize if we didn't get to it because I always try to get to everything I think that will help out fantasy players, especially the FFPC players. And I'm not seeing it in here, and I'm going to stop looking because this is not a great stream conversation. Jaden Reed is taking on the Colts at home without Jordan Love, and if you have him or Ladd McConkey again in that Chargers-Panthers game in Carolina, would you be playing McConkey, given the fact that he has his starting quarterback available, over Jaden Reed, who is catching balls? At least we think he's going to be catching balls from Malik Willis. Whether Willis completes a pass to Jaden Reed, we shall see.
Yeah. Malik Willis has thrown the ball 10 or more times in 3 games in his career. In those 3 games, he's never eclipsed 100 passing yards. He's never thrown a passing touchdown. And his best was he completed 6 of 10 passes, 60% completions. So he's really not an efficient passer. Threw 3 interceptions in those 3 games as well. It is very difficult to trust any of these pass catchers. Now, I mean, if you're going to choose one on the Packers, Jaden Reed makes a lot of sense. But Ladd McConkey, we saw him lead the Chargers last week in receiving, get the touchdown in week 1. Justin Herbert clearly favored him. And again, it's a cake matchup. I know that probably more so favors the run game, but still. The Saints got out to an early lead because of their passing game. I think I'll leave McConkey with the actual quarterback back there.
I think you're right. And I know that the Packers are going to try to scheme Jaden Reed in with some jet sweeps or what have you. But, yeah, it's still McConkey for me. I got some news for you, Jason. Tua Tagovailoa dropped back to pass, intended for Robbie Chosen. He's picked off by Benford at midfield, and Benford returned that ball all the way to the Miami 44, and the Bills will take over first and 10 at the 44. So there's still time. And no, there's not, because it was a rush to Khalil Shakir to end the first quarter, 7-7 with the Bills.
No!
Yeah, sorry, man. Bills at the Miami 42, just 42 yards away. That's all you needed. But the Bills taking over in a tie game as we head to quarter number 2. Now, Brian Thomas and Jameson Williams are two players that we have talked about. Jameson Williams more so than Thomas on this show. But if you had the opportunity where you have both these players on your team and you can only play one of them, Brian Thomas at home against the Cleveland Browns. Detroit is hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's where Jameson Williams will be playing. Jameson Williams dealing with that ankle injury. I can't imagine that's enough for you to say, hey, sit Jameson Williams and play Brian Thomas. You're going to say Whiskey Bill as your coworker at Player Profiler, Theo Greminger, refers to him.
Does he really?
Yeah, I think it was him. I think it was him and Alan Soslowski on the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast. Yeah. They were, I think it was those guys, and I guess don't quote me on it, but this was last year, or maybe it was earlier this offseason, where they're like, we want to talk about Jameson Williams, but we don't want to talk about him where everybody realizes we're talking about him. But they had to come up with a nickname for him, so they just called him Whiskey Bill, and that was his nickname going forward.
I love that. I have Theo on Wake and Take tomorrow, so I'll have
perfect. Another great reason to tune in for sure.
I'll have to ask him about that. But yeah, I'm starting JMO. I don't think I'm benching JMO this season, to be honest with you.
Wow.
I don't think you can, man.
The upside and the talent there is insane. And if that's what we're betting on, and if we want to get the guys that are going to put up these Boffo fantasy weeks, that's what separates the wheat from the chaff, basically. And if he keeps doing what he's doing, then he's going to put up a massive season.
Yeah, can I shout out Player Profiler Data Team?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we put together. I don't know if it'll show. Oh yeah, I have a green screen for Wake and Take, so this is always difficult. But Player Profiler does this data visualization now. Shout out to Aditya. He put this together. It was the top 15 wide receivers in target share and air yard share. Jameson Williams had 68% of the Lions' air yards last week and had an over 30% target share. That's just massive. I know it's only 1 week, but just on top of everything we heard this offseason, it just really it just seems like it's unfolding for this man.
Yeah, and it very well could be. And it wouldn't surprise me at all because I am definitely underweight on Jameson this year in Dynasty and Redraft. Let's move on to tight ends here. Two guys that had big-time week 1 performances. Brock Bowers, who this week is going to be visiting the Baltimore Ravens, or Isaiah Likely, who is hosting the Fightin' Brock Bowers of the Las Vegas Raiders. Which tight end would you rather have in this game? Mark Andrews excluded. You have a chance to start Bowers or Likely. Who is it?
I'll go Bowers, and this it's probably just a cop-out answer. The game script, I think, will favor the Raiders' passing game more. Again, I think the Ravens should get out to a pretty decent lead here. And we saw Brock Bowers get utilized all over the field for the Raiders last week. And a big part of Isaiah Likely's production was because Mark Andrews was still recovering from his injury. He hadn't really practiced at all during the training camp. And was triple teamed most of the game. He was pretty heavily covered, and that opened up the field for Likely. I'm pretty sure week 1 is going to end up being Isaiah Likely's best game this season. He should still be relevant, but that was just such a monster performance, and everything lined up for that to happen. It's very unlikely that type of thing happens again, I think. So I'm just going to go with Brock Bowers, who blew me away in week 1, really.
Isaiah unlikely to have as good of a game as he did in week 1 going forward, according to Jason Allwine from Player Profiler. There you go. I am losing Jake Ferguson and probably Dalton Schultz, which we haven't talked about tonight, in probably a half dozen of my leagues. And my backup in most of those leagues is Tyler Conklin, who I was very high on coming into this season, given how consistent he had been going back to the 2021 season. The last 3 years, he had 60-plus catches. He was great. He puts up 1 catch for 6 yards, I think, on Monday Night Football against San Francisco. And I'm probably going to have to start him in some of those leagues. But what if somebody had the option of starting Cade Otton from Tampa over Tyler Conklin? Who would you rather play there? Cade Otton is going up against, again, the highest total of the week in Detroit this week, a game script that matches up with Baker Mayfield throwing the ball a lot. Conklin or Otton? Who you got in week 2?
I'll lean Otten here, and I'll throw a little bonus, and this could be crazy. If Mike Gesicki is available,
Yeah.
throw that guy in the lineup maybe.
For what it's worth, to your point, I have Dalton Schultz in the Scott Fish Bowl, and I think my only backup was Musgrave, and Gesicki was available, so I did pick him up, and that's probably who I'm going to start, assuming Schultz can't go this week.
Yeah.
But I think that's an interesting guy too, given that I think we heard reports that they were going to be using him as like sort of a big slot more than a tight end this year, which is music to our ears, right? That's what we want to see. Yeah. Going forward here, last tight end one, Pat Freiermuth or Colby Parkinson. Parkinson never would have been in this conversation prior to week 1, but given his performance last week, I think he's in that conversation with Freiermuth, who is at Denver this week, and Parkinson is taking on the Cardinals in Arizona.
Yes, I'll say Colby Parkinson. If you're listening, I am disappointed you shaved your hair. However, you are hitting my starting lineup over Pat Freiermuth this week. I do think no Puka Nacua will leave the door open for Colby Parkinson. The Rams like the tight end. He had 5 targets last week, brought in 4 of them for 47. And Pat Freiermuth still catching passes from Justin Fields. And he had 4 targets last week, but only 27 yards. George Pickens got like 80-something% of the air yard share. Like everything was going George Pickens' way. And I think that the Steelers could honestly run away with this game against Denver to where Pat Freiermuth doesn't really need to get involved. So give me Parkinson in the shootout against the Cardinals.
The spread on that game between the Steelers and the Broncos is, God, I thought I had this up. My apologies.
You're good.
2.5 for the Steelers in Denver. So, I mean, I could see that too. Total on that is only 36.5, but this could be wheels up for Pittsburgh in this game. We'll see what happens. Curtis Samuel pass in the end zone from Josh Allen is incomplete. Now 3rd and 7 for Buffalo from the Miami 25. And we'll keep you abreast of what happens at the end of this drive here. Speaking of Justin, it is incomplete pass to Ty Johnson on 3rd and 7, and Tyler Bass kicks the 43-yard field goal. So now 10-7, 12:41 to go in the first half. Buffalo on top of Miami. And Jason, what's blowing me away in this game, I can't believe how sweaty everybody is. It must be about 120 degrees on that field. Tua Tagovailoa just looks like Patrick Ewing, like in his prime, just pouring sweat.
You're up in Wisconsin. You have no idea the humidity we have to deal with down here. It is miserable, and I hate every moment I'm outside.
Yeah.
It's just a snap and you're sweating.
I mean, there is a lot of humidity in Wisconsin, but the thing is the heat is non-existent here for 10 months out of the year. So that's the great part about it. Couple more here. Joe Burrow or Justin Fields? We just were talking about Justin Fields. Are we still rolling with Burrow, or is there enough upside again with the Steelers' potential to run away with this game? Do we talk about Fields over Burrow this week?
I think I want to start Joe Burrow where I have him, but I also do understand that he looked terrible last week, and the Chiefs' defense is really, really good. So I think Justin Fields is a fine pivot given his rushing floor. I think he'll have about the same usage he had against the Falcons last week, but the Broncos' defense is worse. So he should hopefully maybe get a rushing touchdown, 30 more rush yards or something like that, just from like one better play. I don't know. But Justin Fields, I think, will have a decent enough floor to where I think that that's a fine pivot, but I will be very upset if Joe Burrow actually does bounce back in this game.
Interesting. I had a lot of leagues this year, and I encourage people to do the same thing. If you wanted to draft Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams, go ahead and pair him with a veteran quarterback. And I have several teams where I have Jaden Daniels and I have Jared Goff. I like both matchups this week. Daniels at home against the Giants, Goff at home against the Buccaneers. If you can only play one, who's it going to be here, Jason?
Jaden Daniels. Yeah, I'm rolling with him this week.
And you said you were pretty high on him this season, right?
Decently. I would say decently. At his price, yes. I'm still more of I was drafting Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Like I really like getting my quarterback early. But Jaden Daniels is my Scott Fish Bowl quarterback, to your point.
Oh, there you go.
And I did get him where I could. It was just I'm an early, like, when I build my teams, I get my foundation. I get my running back. I get my wide receiver. I get my quarterback. I get my tight end. That's always how I go about it. And so I don't have enough Jaden Daniels, but I do start him where I have him.
Last one, Brock Purdy or Matthew Stafford. Purdy on the road at Minnesota, Matthew Stafford in Arizona against the Cards.
I'm nothing if not consistent. I think the 49ers are going to destroy the Vikings, meaning that Brock Purdy probably doesn't have that great of a game. Matthew Stafford shootout against the Cardinals. Him and Cooper Kupp are going to combine for 5 million yards. And you got to start Matthew Stafford this week.
The total in that game is indeed 48. The total that was the Cardinals and Rams. The total on that Niners-Vikings game, 46.5. So it gets a little bit up there. But if it is the Niners running away with that game and they are 5.5-point favorites, then maybe Purdy does not have as big of a game. Jason Allwine from Player Profiler, the host of Wake and Take, which you can watch. Is it 10:30 Eastern every morning? 10 Eastern every morning. You'll have Theo Greminger on there tomorrow on the Player Profiler Network. And you can obviously watch the Player Profiler YouTube as well. At JFootballWine, is there anything else I should be plugging for people who want to consume more of your work?
No, I mean, I pretty much post everything. It's at JFootballWine on all social media.
Okay.
I went ahead and locked it down. I'm not saying I post there. For the most part, it's going to be Twitter and maybe some Instagram stuff here and there. But yeah, I like to post all over. I have a YouTube channel that doesn't have a lot yet, but I plan to start uploading too. But Wake and Take's the big thing. I love doing that show. I do a lot for Player Profiler, director of their social media. So that's most of my time. So definitely follow Player Profiler on all the social media networks as well, if you so please.
JFootballWine and Player Profiler is what you need to follow. Remember to follow the FFPC Weekly Challenge. MyFFPC.com, 10 or 12 players. Watch them ride through the weekend's games. You can pick any players you want. No stacking, no draft, no salary cap. Win up to $2,500, $35 entry fee, or $200. MyFFPC.com. We are back next Thursday with Optimus Fantasy's C.H. Herm's going to be joining me to host the show with me. Jason, this was so much fun. I had a blast, learned so much, and it was fun hanging out with you for 2 hours tonight.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
That was a lot of fun. We'll do it again sometime soon. Thanks to our producer, Matt Deutsch. For Matt Deutsch and for Jason Allwine, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody.